order and then you can.
Are you calling it to order?
Yep.
I'm calling the meeting of public safety to order. First up, Bob would like the floor.
Okay, everybody, for those that haven't met him, Charlie Hall is the new supervisor in Dresden. We welcome him, and I'm not gonna have you go around the room and say your names, but he won't remember any of it. So just in the meantime, catch up with him and introduce yourself, and say hi. We've got him, nowhere near up to speed, but, we're working on it. Okay, so welcome, Charlie.
Welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, first order of business, we need to accept the minutes of the August 27 meeting. Moved by Nate. Seconded by Jim. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Wow, they're agreeing with me already, so we're off to a good start.
What was that?
It's a new phone. Said God bless you.
That's scary. Is it your voice?
No. I wouldn't say it because that was not mine.
It's a smartphone.
All right, first up, weights and measures. Come on up and have a seat in the hot seat.
It's a measure.
You're first, so you should be pretty safe.
It'll be a pretty cool seat.
We get a new guy in here. Hey,
Yeah, whatever. Let's go forward.
You brought him in on mine. What did you expect? All right. Let's start with your budget. You have.
Basically the same.
I don't, I'll make it go, don't kill it. So he has his revenues on page 16 and expenses on page 77. Where not from the purpose. Is there any highlights you'd like to make on any of your stuff?
No, just the revenue's a little higher. We got a new, contract for that. It's raised the price. I did last time, 5-year contract for by like $3 in the last one, so we're pretty good at setting the budget. For that, and everything else is pretty much the same. The postage, I went down a little because I've been spending it, but pretty small budget. Past few years.
And I know in carpool, there's actually in for a new vehicle.
Yeah.
And I assume yours is getting old.
It's 2016. Yeah. It's almost 3,000 miles. Talk to Jake about that.
No, it's just the updates from the electronics. It's probably good for his town.
Again, 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Oh, my 100-gallon prover that I use in those fuel trucks on the budget this year. I'm gonna get it certified hopefully this fall or winter. They're probably gonna tell me I need a new one by the time the certification's up, which is 5 years. Right now, they're anywhere between $50,000 to $70,000. Just keep it in your mind for the next few years.
How's it work?
What's that?
How's it working? Is it functional?
Yeah, it works. It's just old and it doesn't have like the grounding and bonding and all that.
Are we going to, have a sudden die on us in the middle of?
No, maybe the motor.
I was just wondering if we started to think about budgeting it now, and get it ahead of. Trying to do another 5 years.
I mean,
I've heard about this every year I've been here.
it's been around since the 40s, so I don't
I
think
know.
it's gonna go anywhere quickly, but
It
Yeah.
predates Brian and I, so.
And maybe the better way to handle that almost is that if we do have a surplus, maybe buy it. This might be a one-time thing that you wanna actually replace if it's that old.
Right.
Especially if the motor does, once something goes, everything starts to go.
And then, hey, man. It's something we get dinged
That
out by the
was you.
state if we haven't got it certified.
yeah, I'm taking to get certified hopefully November, December, and see what they have to say about it.
We'll know right away.
Well, if it fails, get certified, then we're all of a sudden in an emergency as far as.
Well, the thing is, they can't. I guess they could fail it, but they give you 5 years to get a new one. So,
We can say any contingency, we can.
Not really a failure.
Just,
because they can adjust it. The fact, it has to be accurate, they can adjust it. You know, that's not the issue, it's just.
okay, well, you're apparently not as concerned about it as I am, so I guess we'll go with you.
I like my own.
I'm sure your opinion is more valuable.
You did say something about grounding and safety, though, they got my.
Yeah, I don't test gasoline, though, so it's not
Okay.
that big.
But to Brian's point, if our contingency is still healthy in December, we might want to talk about.
Right.
Do you have any training or any classes you're going through this year?
Yeah, every year, June. Usually it's in Syracuse, this year it's in Oswego. It's a week in June.
So you submitted that as your travel? plan?
Yep.
Okay,
Great.
Very good.
Thank you.
Right?
anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Heck, yeah.
Have a good one, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Graham, you're next up. And looks like revenues on page 10, expenses on 62.
Wasn't your grandfather?
Right, so as far as the income, after getting the increases, anticipating around some of $40,000 more for our income. I'm gonna be working on reviewing the actual building permit fees. Ones I spoke about before were more for like renewals and searches and stuff, so I'm gonna be redoing permit fees and presenting that to folks at a later date, so they'll be removing even more on that. As far as the expenses, I'm requesting an additional $1,000, so from 3,000 to 4,000 for postage. An additional 500 for office supplies, from 4,000 to 4,500. And an additional 3,000 for carpool. Basically, everything else I don't have any control over, as far as our expenses.
Yeah, just John, so the inspection, the permit renewals, is that just for clarification for me? Because I didn't understand what you said for sure. Is that based on the amount you're gonna propose to us or on what it actually is now?
The renewals have already been approved. The increase on it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? Do you have any personal?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You went up 6,000 and you're fine, do you think that's? Do you see that trending up that high?
Yes, yeah, let's see, new, schedule, approved. We're, doubling the amount for building without a permit. I don't remember what else it was on that, but yeah, I crushed the numbers. Yep.
Any personnel or travel plans?
No travel plans, and I know this is not the greatest timing, but I've been working on this since before we got our letter from you, Brian. I have a very difficult time filling at this moment, one position been open for months. Getting there are people that aren't qualified to do the work, or people that are qualified. A few of them I called, and once they found out what the rate of pay was, they were no longer interested. I reached out to some neighboring offices, actually 38 of them, to see what their starting pay was. And there's only 4 of those that are less than our county. Currently at a grade 12 for our code enforcement officers. And after making all of those phone calls, the average is a grade 15 to 16. Um, so I'm asking to get an increase to my folks over there. Currently, Warren County has a job listing for $6,000 more than our starting pay. And I have people that have been working here for 8 years that aren't. So I think in order to keep the people that we have, the ones that have been trained, gone through all of the downtime of getting trained, instead of cycling through people more often, if we keep the ones that we have, pay them a little more instead of the unseen costs or having them sit in the office for 6 months. Learning the job over again, somebody new. Money well spent. You could do a team that knows the job, knows the specific projects that are going on. So that's what I'm requesting. Really like if I could get them raised to grade 15. Danielle has run some numbers on what that would cost.
I believe we're looking at about $10,500. Sound about right? For a cost,
Each. What I've got here, if it was a grade 14 increase, it'd be about a $5,000 each, 35,000.
for the,
If it was grade 15, it would be about 7,500. 52.
plus French.
Well, would the fringe be in addition on top of that stuff?
Yeah, there's addition, that would be additional.
Retirement.
Rate of pay goes up, yeah.
So, social security. All that. So,
Okay.
So
next
7 months.
For the 15,
No, that's the 10,000.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, for the grade 15, it'd be about $10,000. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying 10,000 fringe and everything included
Yes.
Yes,
for 7 guys?
yeah.
Right.
I say this every time we do this, but when you increase the workers, you increase the compression to the people above them, so that, you know, there's almost a mandatory in a couple of years, if that increase, you know, all the way up to the ladder, you increase the ladder all at once, or you get the compression and then have, you know, not John in particular, this is a general statement. The supervisor being dissatisfied because people under him are making as much or more than he is. But that, well, and then once we do that, it ripples through the entire business, so. And I'm not advocating against it whatsoever, but it's a pretty tough job, it's pretty low pay. We ought to, when we think about it, we ought to think about it in grander terms, and it's gonna cost us $10,000 or we ought to think about what we're gonna do. And then just plan on spending that money. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, I'm saying just plan on all the additional spending.
Because right now it takes about 6 months for a person who isn't certified to come in and get all the training to become certified. That's no cost to the county as far as the actual classes. The state offers that for free. But it's time that we don't have somebody out there doing the full job that they're supposed to be doing, eventually doing. From experience, it is very difficult to pick up where somebody else left off when they leave. So it'd be nice for continuity if we could have good people there getting paid well, they want to stay there. It doesn't mean, because I've had 4 people resign in 5 years. Another person retired early. We've had a lot of turnaround and I'd like to try to minimize that by kind of catching up with our neighbors just 5 miles down the road.
Yeah, maybe one of the things you could work with Daniel on too is adding like a senior code enforcement officer. So that you had the current level that you're at, but then they had something to shoot for if they, you know what I mean? So if you recruited at the level they're at now, they knew that there was an opportunity to move up into like a senior position that paid. So that might be a compromise too, where you added a couple of 2 or 3 senior positions and it gave them something to achieve. After staying with us for a little while, that might be an issue to consider as well.
In your income, that includes the raise on penalties and everything on oaths.
Yes.
And with that said, you're still up to total budget of, if we go with the code 15 or grade 15, you'd be up 106,394 for your budget.
Okay.
John, if are you backlog, you're missing a person, are you backlog? If we had people in position, you had whole position, people that knew their job, will you generate more income?
I can't really say that that would be the case because it doesn't mean that we're going to get more permits in.
But you never seem to get to the point where a guy's sitting in the office with no permits to go check on it.
The turnaround can just be better.
And it's, I mean, we've got, this year we're on par to probably 220 complaints that we're looking into also, just skyrocketing, and I've basically been doing those myself. Behind on those because we're short staffed. Yeah.
And did you have a question?
Yeah, my question was, so we give them the additional monies for they get paid while they're going to train. So there's nothing that keeps them here even afterwards, right? We're gonna pay them that money, give them the raise, start them out with, let's say we give them money, start them out at that $6,000 or $7,000 increase. We're gonna train them. It's not gonna cost us for the training itself, but it's gonna cost us for the time they're spent while training. Is there anything that we have in place, and it's not just your department, several departments, that could be a factor to be able to keep them here in some kind of arrangement or whatever the case would be?
So don't under.
The day and a half indentured servant.
I thought the same thing. I was not gonna repeat it.
You didn't
But
want that.
Somebody
You wanted to
had,
have a contract, right?
Yeah,
are you
but-
thinking something
Well-
like think so? Like the law enforcement, that if, you know, like say, someone gets, I'll throw Whitehall, even though they haven't got PD out there anymore, right, I'll send somebody to the academy, then they go somewhere else, and that receiving agency has to pay back effectively.
I don't.
In this case, we're not paying for the
We're
training.
not paying for trains, so you can't do
Yeah,
it.
we-
Yeah.
well, they can reimburse you zero.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost for the training, because you can do it right online.
It's all done online then.
But there is cost for the training, because we're paying them while they're training.
Salary,
Yeah,
The
right?
training itself though. Yeah, there's no cost to the county.
Salary's a bigger number anyway.
I do know an employee come that was already trained, that trained herself.
A few of them.
But are you counting that as one that resigned?
It lasts 3 weeks.
Yeah, I know that.
But at the same token, you might not want to bind the person to you either, because just because they go through the training doesn't mean they learn the training.
True.
So at the same token, if you're trying to lock somebody to you, now you've locked them and they're not worth what there's always a flip side.
I'm unaware of any other departments that are not departments, any other code enforcement officers that do that.
Just a question.
Done.
What would starting be? Not a grade 15, what? You're gonna raise everybody up to grade 15 and the new hires are gonna get grade 15 also?
Yes, that's what other areas are getting. As new hires, be competitive with them.
So they're gonna be equal with somebody that's been there 8 years.
They'd be the same grade, but then there's the longevity and 1, 2, 3 years.
The person that's been here longer would still be making.
Yeah. But now, when you compare the, you saying step whatever, I assume every county's on a different step. So are you looking at the annual dollar value, or are you comparing your step to their step?
I was looking at the initial
Base
base cost.
Yeah,
Or basic.
the actual dollar value.
Base rate.
Nate's first.
Don, how have your building permits been trending the last 3 or 4 years? Are you down this year or you go up?
Last I checked it, which was at the end of July, I believe, we were higher at the same time previous years. So they've been going up.
So,
I like the approach that Al talked about, where you have something to work towards, and so that, you know, all your extra points or whatever are not all at grade 15. And I understand that longevity in the long term, they're gonna make more money. But the fact is, they're still all at the same grade. So there's no possibility of future growth, and they're the way the grades look. And so I think they go back to the drawing board, maybe with Danielle, and think about how you formulate or what's up.
Yeah, so, so that would be building some kind of promotional plan for the department. Currently, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but all the code enforcement officers have their own territories.
Yeah.
So nobody really supervises another one. John supervises the whole department and all of them. So that would mean just restructuring, I guess, the current plan that you have now, so that you actually had a supervisory position, maybe assisting you, watching and helping everyone. That's what that would mean, just creating a supervisory position, whether or not that would work for you, I don't know, because that would probably take someone off a territory,
Right.
right?
Supervisor.
Like we
that's what I was
have
gonna
a
say.
senior Concord that doesn't supervise that.
Right, so there's-
All civil service, it
I just thought it might
depends
be worth the
on what
conversation.
the job description is, yeah. If he wants to create a new position, you would just have to talk to the personnel officer to create the duties for that. But that's not really what you're asking for.
Yeah,
But if it's
might not
It's an
fit the
example.
situation.
I get everybody.
And that'll be discussed
In
at
person.
the next month's meeting.
Yeah.
Any other questions for John? Okay.
Thank
Thank you, John.
Thank you for coming with the figures on that. The personnel side of it, so we can add it together.
Right.
That helps.
Thank you much.
Why couldn't you? Listen, my dog,
I've had long days. Move along.
and I haven't. Go ahead, so.
My first meeting was at 7 this morning in the rain.
It'd be nice if you-
Do you want me to call you tomorrow when I get up
Yes.
at 4?
Do that. I said.
Glad Sue
Well,
got
great,
it.
you're between us.
I'm glad Sue got in between.
She's not, John.
Stop for revenues are on page 17 and 18, expenses 81, 82. If I looked it up correctly.
Was there any particular, just dig right in and start?
It's a highlight.
All right, so the highlight,
81.
page 17,
It's the revenue side.
is the revenue. So the highlights on the revenue side is on 2210.11. This is our area that includes our contract with Warren County, which does end on December 31st of this year. We're in negotiations potentially with Warren County. And for last year, it was 110,000. This year, we want them to contract with us for 213,000. It's at the stage they're trying to figure out how they're paying for it. And I think the Department of Social Services Commissioner has brought it to her committee, and it looks like it's a go for the 213,000. However, we did not add it to the budget because
We're waiting for,
we're
yeah,
waiting.
we need to be official.
That proposal was a 3-year proposal and with a 3% escalator for year 2 and year 3 built into the potential contract. So that's definitely a highlight. We anticipate, our department income other, that's our drug classes, our Alive at 25, our drug testing. We anticipate that being the same. The transitions, that's the contract with Hudson Falls School to provide services for those that are incarcerated in jail. We anticipate that to remain the same. The 3389.04. This is a change in that those are dollars that we have used for several years to support the VA service program using our YDP dollars. However, that program really has reduced the number of youth that we actually receive referrals for, based on, the differences in the criminal justice system. So we're proposing not to fund under YDP, but to keep our PYD PYD parks program that we ran last year with Derby Park, but this year we're proposing that we're gonna fund that program at 17,664. That still, of course, needs to be approved by the youth board, and then be approved by the state. So that's really a difference there. Under our 33.
And where's that number? You've already added that in on another line, or?
Yes. Yeah, so that will be added into our YDP program line, 3820. Thank you, Andrea.
Okay. So it's not there yet, though. That's all I'm trying to clarify.
Not there yet.
It's not on the line yet that will be added? Or
not
it's
part of
in
the
there now?
budget
It is part of our budget.
It's in
It
there
is
now, okay.
Part
That's
of
all I
our
need.
budget for this coming year, yes. However, it still needs to be approved, those steps, but it's part of our budget. And then the 338906. This is, we put in the 26,370, which is our 13A dollars. However, there are pretrial dollars also that we anticipate that we will be rolling over from this year to next year at a 75% of the 97,645, which will be 73,234 rolled over into next year, on that line. The ATI E-Task grant, which is 338914. We have just received notice that that's in its 3rd year, and that we will be receiving that. Other highlights. Our Rural of Community Practice grant, which would have been under our 3820, that has ended, so there's no more dollars in that. Last year, I think we had 53,000 of that. However, the runaway and homeless youth dollars that are pass-through dollars were significantly increased, which is why the difference in the dollar amounts. So that brings us to the total income, which is actually less from last year of 124,756. However, if we factor in the $213,000 contract with Warren County, the 73,234 rollover dollars, and then there's the opioid settlement dollars that also we will be looking to roll over those dollars as our pre-arrest diversion just got up and running, and then we'll be developing spending plan for that. So that's another 30,000 that would be rolled over, which is currently in our 0.1s for this year.
Any questions from anyone on Sue's income?
Okay, now expenses.
Yvonne,
Page 81. So we reduced our overtime, both lines for our overtime by 3%. Let's see. Howard, is this a time to discuss potential staffing, or do we do that now?
sure, you can throw it out now.
Okay, I'll throw it out now. Our requests for potential staffing would be we do have senior level positions, or we have some that are at a senior level position. So we have one person that would theoretically be eligible to move to a senior level position if approved, and the dollar amount from a grade 13 to a 15 would be $3,173.52. So that would be an increase on that line. And then we have talked to Danielle, we have another position that's actually a youth specialist position that is at a grade 14. And so we were proposing to move that grade to a 15, which would be equal to, it was 2 grades higher originally. Now we have senior positions, so to have that be a grade 15 also, and that increase would be $396.90. And then our third possible is only tied to the Warren County contract. If we do receive the contract, we would like to have a paid intern position, which it would be a 20-hour position at a grade 8, which would be a total cost if the position was filled for the entire year, which we know probably won't be, would be $22,339. So all said, with those 3 items, we would be asking for an increase of $25,512.52 for that line, those lines. Sorry. Okay. Yep.
Sue, so just go through your promotions again.
Yep.
One is a program specialist to a senior program specialist.
Yes,
A 13 to a 15.
yes.
And I have a cost of $4,200 on that one, including French. And then,
Oh, and so we may not have included French.
and then you had a youth program coordinator that you wanted from
We
a
have-
14 to a 15.
Yes.
Okay, and that's $2,600,
With French.
including French, yes?
Okay.
That's yes. That's 3, working towards the 5. So going from step 3 at 14 to a 15 days was only an increase of 390.
Okay, you might want to talk to the personnel officer about that, because that's not matching her numbers. And then the youth intern, that's dependent on the Warren County contract.
Right,
Right, so that would
Absolutely
actually be a
dependent.
cost, right?
right.
Yeah, that would be.
Completely. We would not
Okay.
have an intern if we did not have
Thank you.
potentially that contract.
Thank you.
Any
Okay,
questions?
you got one more there, don't you, Melissa?
I just said 3, right?
Yeah, just the
42, 26, and
The
The
25.
20,
25.
25 was the intern if the Warren County
22,
contract was
339.
That would be.
Otherwise, it's not coming anyway.
Warren
Okay.
County.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just find it interesting. I see she's got weed whackers listed in her.
We noticed that yesterday.
Yeah, I know what they're for, but the,
Right.
building the grounds, they have Lake Lauderdale, it's $1,000 for one. Then the building the grounds, the next one is $1,300, and Sue's comes in at $200.
So I can say, and I do, it may be a difference in quality.
Yep, I'm sure.
And I'm saying that because we have, of course, it's community service, and they may be a little bit rougher on equipment. We do really try, and we've done very well with equipment. However, we have found that if we pay $600 with our particular clientele for an item, we're not any better off.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It
to
does.
you. So
It
we
does.
buy some lower, maybe what we would use for household kind of items. And then we try to get as long as we possibly can. And we try to maybe get the same brand so that we can take parts off of one to
Fix
put
the other,
onto
yeah.
another
Gotcha.
and those types of things. So it might be just a difference in quality.
Yeah.
To be.
I'm sure it is.
About that. And we have experimented a little bit over the years, even with our push lawn mowers, you know, our basic push lawn mowers last just as long for our purposes as something that costs a little bit more.
You guys do a great job with that, by the way.
Well, thank you. It is a great program, beneficial. But right this second, I think, you know, we do have a couple of new mowers to move us through, so we were able to reduce those lines. So down to 40/40, we kept our electronic monitoring the same, but the OCFS, YDP, Youth Sports and Education, Youth Team Sports, for this year, the state has allowed us to keep 15% admin out of those dollars. So we are proposing that we're going to keep the 15% administration dollars out of those. And then moving forward, it would be probably dependent on, you know, budgets and whatever, if maybe one year is we have additional funds from a different source, we could put those dollars back out for the community. Runaway and homeless youth is 10% admin that we generally have always kept.
Even though those admin dollars are reflected in your revenues.
Yes, they are. We try to reduce all of our, expenses by about 3%. Then, our miscellaneous other line, 40.18. That will now be our program expense line, which will be, I can't read my writing.
4290.
Thank you. It's like a one here.
I know, I got it.
4290. So that line will be gone. That's the highlights of our, and again, the community of practice grant is at 0 because that grant is abandoned or will be.
Anybody have any questions for Sue? Okay, thank you. Oh, do you have a travel plan?
Travel plan. We do have a travel plan. So we anticipate, we have association. We have the New York State Bureau Association, so we anticipate that depending on where it is, and it may be, this year it's in White Plains, and it's usually myself, but directors can get the directors training and then a youth bureau conference training. So we anticipate a maximum of 4 employees going to this event. To be determined where it is. If it's local in Albany, then it wouldn't be necessary to stay overnight. It's 2 days, so it's 1 overnight. And then we have the New York State NIAPSA conference, the New York State Association of Pretrial Services. And both myself, I'm the secretary for that association, and Stacy Fusco in our office is also the treasurer. Traditionally, that conference is held in Troy. However, we do have association meetings the night before. So we did ask for 1 night for 2 employees for that conference. However, we are in planning stages and we may not have a conference next year. So it may be a 2-year. That one might not be something that we have. And then we have the director's training, which is prior to the Youth Bureau Association training. That would be for 1 overnight for maximum of 4 employees. Generally speaking, the associations pay for the cost of the directors, but we did add it to our travel plan just in case it was, and factored that into our expenses just in case.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is probation. Tracy. Item. You said no, okay.
It's gone.
It's going.
Really well.
Very budget day.
They're all very, don't worry about that.
Okay, so it looks like income is on page 9 and expenses on 54 to 56.
Right around home.
Yep,
So
hit the highest.
probation, we receive revenue from mostly state aid, which is state aid block grant. It's changed over the years from different things, different qualifiers, but it's been stuck at $130,000 for about the last 20 something years. They froze it years ago. They never increased it. And that is included in where you see state aid probation services. That also includes reimbursement for pre-sentence investigations on state prison inmates, because right now we have 2 state prisons. And it includes ignition interlock funding we receive quarterly. Ignition interlock funding is based on the amount of cases that are sent to us from the local courts. If we receive more DWI ignition interlock cases, we receive more funding for that. The state prison numbers were actually much higher prior to COVID. They stopped sending people, they stopped charging them for crimes inside the facility around COVID. It never increased to the normal rates. But now we're anticipating that we'll never see those rates that were pre-COVID in our county court anyway. So we're anticipating a lower amount of revenue going forward, probably about $2,000 coming back from the state for doing them. We're still going to have Washington Correctional Facility arrests, but not very well. The $130,000 every single year, our state association petitions to restore that back to an acceptable level, and it's ignored. So we continue to ask for more from probation funding. It does not come. The last 2 years we've discussed including raise the age grant funding in the budget. It is approximately $92,000. We've discussed that every year at budget time. Been reluctant to put it in because it's a horrible budget cycle. We're right now fighting with them 2 years back, 2021, we're fighting over right now. And as a matter of fact, they tried to deny $30,000 of it because the word probation officer did not encompass probation assistant, probation officer, probation, senior probation officer, and probation supervisor, which are included in what they're going to reimburse for us. So they tried to hold back $30,000 from the treasurer's office. So I'm fighting with them back and forth. It looks like we're going to receive the additional $30,000, but until that becomes even a little bit stabilized, I don't really feel comfortable putting it in, because what year you're ever going to receive it into is kind of crazy. What I hope happens to that funding is that, just like the sex offender money and other money that came in the past that were grants, they rolled them into our state aid funding. We received it every year after they saw what each county would normally get reimbursed over a few year period. They'd say, okay, there's not a big fluctuation now. This is what you normally get. This is what you're gonna get every year. So, yeah, then it would help a little bit for budgeting. It's also something where if you use it, you receive it. If you don't use it, you don't get it. So if I'm down staff and I don't have employees, we didn't pay that number between 35 and 40 because we increased our staff from 35 hours to 40 for raise the age. We get reimbursed that 5 hours every pay period for every single one of those titles. If I can't fill vacancy, we don't get paid for it, but we also don't expend it. So that's how it works.
Kind of like the public defender's office.
It's very similar.
Same groups involved.
They pay a little faster, I think, than the public defender's office,
Yeah.
which is nice. Any questions on the revenue side? We are adding one thing. If you look just above where I said state aid, I know they're not big numbers, but $5,000 is collecting a restitution. We get a surcharge for every dollar we collect for crime victims, except for juveniles. They're waived. they pay at the time of sentencing, the surcharge is also waived. The custody fee is only if someone makes a lot of money and we're doing a custody investigation in the family court, do we ever charge them? Otherwise, most people are declared indigent. We don't receive any cash for that. The 2,500 is a new line I'm putting in. We're working with the treasurer about how to account for polygraph money. We had a different way of working with the polygraph contractor on payment. Now we're receiving every dollar coming in from any defendant instead of it going to the polygrapher. And then him billing the difference. We're now tracking a little better, which is a lot smarter financially, and I appreciate the treasurer on that. So you're gonna see some money in that line. Expenditures, obviously the cost of living on the personnel line went up, predictable rate, but after that, it's an increase in one line that we didn't have over the last few years. It's bulletproof vests, a 5-year cycle on purchasing of our vests. The last 2 years, we included in our budget. The treasurer worked with us to do a joint purchase with the sheriff's department. We transferred the funds over there. They did the purchase. We put it back, but we both, the sheriff's department and ourselves, applied and brought it to committee for the federal grant reimbursement. It was money reimbursed for both of us. Sheriff's department had a much larger reimbursement, but they had a much larger request for the federal government. They say that it's 50% reimbursement. They will give you 50% reimbursement on the vest if they reimburse your total amount of vests. So for me, they did not. So they didn't give me a 1-for-1 50%. They told us that I qualified and we received it, but when the money came back, it looked like it was about maybe 5,500, just a little bit over. Instead of true 50%, we'd be looking at over 10 grand, maybe 12. So that's something that I want to talk to the sheriff's department a little bit about and see if it's smarter for us to maybe wait to the next grant cycle and try it again, or if I'm going to purchase in this grant cycle. I have to budget for it either way, but that's something that maybe we have a conversation with between treasurer's office, maybe county admin's helping us actually with the grant now, and then come back. But if I don't put it in the budget, there's no chance of taking care of that when we should. 5 years is the recommended window on the purchase of vests. I know the sheriff's department comes in and says the same thing. If this is something that the board wants me to push off a year because of something else, let me know. But that's what I have in right now. Rest of my budget.
Are they up this year?
2025 is 5 years. We received our other ones in 2020. So you start it early, so you start your grant request the year prior, because it's a 2-year cycle that you're eligible on the vest reimbursement. So when you're granted the 50% reimbursement, it'll last 2 years. So you can buy it anywhere in that window. We applied last year, so it's right there. It's at the 5 years. Some vests, like get worn a little more, and some other ones do not. So that's
Still is an issue.
Yeah, and we try to keep anything that looks really, really good. We try to keep around the office in case a new employee comes in. We haven't had time to order one. And also we try to swap with the sheriff's department. If they have somebody that maybe comes in as a different size, we might have one that looks great, or they have the jail doing a transport. So we don't just throw vests away either that look great. We try to keep them segregated for another purpose. The best thing is,
Is it if it looks good or does the quality wear down?
we shoot them at the range. I can tell you this, I've shot a bulletproof vest that's 10 years old, and it stops every handgun we put into it. A deer rifle's a little different story. We've shot them with buckshot, birdshot, and slugs. And we've tried them plain, and we've tried them with watermelons inside of them to see what the damage is. And we do it just because you want to know, but also for the benefit of your officers seeing it, to show that
It won't protect
it might save your life.
Or it won't.
It's gonna hurt. Well, this slug is a whole different story. Yellow. But that's true. Sometimes they look good, but they do work.
Shoot it with an arrow.
I don't know.
It goes right through like a little there.
Really?
Yeah.
It scares me too. So it's,
Can I go back to the on-call yet?
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like the actual amount for 2024 was higher than I've been in the past.
Mhm.
And will you have enough in your budget to make this?
I have no idea why that does that. It doesn't come through my office. It's done outside of my office, the app stuff. It's set by contract and it's the same rate every single day. There's, did you see that? It was like,
What's your question?
13.8 as of the actual for
It
twenty.
looks normal. What do you?
Is it, I'm saying
looking
that
back to
this goes
23?
back to, this is how much has been spent up to the end of July, correct?
Probably the end of August. Probably the end of August, so these were printed in September.
That number's, right up to date.
I think it's right.
It's on each payroll. So that's no more than whatever this was printed.
Yeah.
I
let's see what's budgeted.
think that's fairly fresh.
Okay.
Those
my
budgets
question
are based on.
Which line
So we
item?
know the number going in.
I think.
3140.
You should hit it right on the nose.
130.
I thought you were looking at the 23 versus what the budget for 25, and I think
We know how many weekend days and know how many weekdays.
Yeah.
So it should hit it right on the nose in the perfect world.
Okay.
And it's the
Depending
same
on how many
number
times we were called out.
for Dan and public defender, county attorney. We know the number countywide.
So the 19,905 is gonna be enough.
Yes, ma'am.
it's pretty solid budget because we, whether it's myself, probation supervisor, other titles, we're all get the same rank, so it's. Should be able to fix it pretty close. Do you have any questions about any of my lines? There's not a lot there.
Nobody has any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yep, let's
travel.
do it.
Right.
All
I
right,
don't
so
know why.
I have two things. Last 2 years have been the same for the travel plan.
Just sat around chair.
One is for the Probation Officers Association. Years ago, when it was held in Albany, we used to be able to send 7 officers down to Probation Officers Association and they could do day trips, drive to Albany, great, no stay, carpool in a van, like pack them in. They moved it to Syracuse, so we had very poor attendance at the Syracuse event because of hotel stays. So last year we asked if we could send people back. It's a very good format because when you go to the training, it actually has breakout sessions, numerous ones. So you can pick where you want to go. It's not just sitting in a room, this is your training, whether you like it or not. It's very, very good for, we didn't end up going this year because of some things in the office and we got busy. So I'd like to send some people next year if we can. The other one is for myself to go to the COPA conference, the Council of Probation Administrators Conference, and it is paid for by COPA. The only thing would be car, whether I take county car or my own.
And that's all budget.
That's all budgeted. It's budgeted and the COPA stuff is 100% paid for by dues and everything else.
Thanks, Dan.
Last year was on Oswego, this year, or 25, they're gonna do Saranac Lake. What's that?
How's it not Disney World?
It's right in New York State.
That's why you want a car.
Car, yeah, no planes.
Okay,
Sarah,
since today is the third day of doing this and yesterday I was watching people struggling to stay awake and it's raining. Ryan doesn't know how to run. I brought candy.
all right. They're working out.
So now,
Problem, Brian.
you guys have candy. Alright, Mana. I had a snarky comment, but right before, a lawyer, so. I might so Tony's way down the sheet. Dan already mad at me. Yeah, the best sense of humor.
We're a year and a half into the increased rate and hopefully we're studying ourselves.
Pages 2 and 24 and 25.
And hopefully we're settling down or leveling off. We get reimbursed from the state about $120,000 each quarter. So that's half of the new increase. So we pay about 3/4 of that, and we get 120,000 back. Again, I hope this leveling off. I think you're all aware we have the family grant, 250,000 a year. That's gonna help us offset the Article 10 vouchers. And we have a new employee, a part-time social worker intake person, and that's actually working out really well. Her salary is reflected in here, but ultimately it's supposed to be on a different line correct out, and it will be taken out of the grant.
There we go, three new appointments.
Yeah, okay. So, so we'll offset for her salary. It's a part-time salary, 20 hours a week, $25 an hour. We tried to, stay as low as we could in increasing our, requests for, felony misdemeanors and things like that. Family court, we continue to get hammered in. There's no, there's no check at the door. You can walk into family court, you can say whatever you want to say, and they'll take the petition, file it, and, we have to react. Other than that, pretty much where we're at.
Okay, no questions on revenue, we'll move on to expenses. Again, that's page 24 and 25.
Yep. Again, we tried to just do modest increases in our expenses. It's very hard to judge what we're gonna spend, because things just fluctuate. Again, family court increases each year exponentially, and we try to take that into consideration. But we do receive money from ILS for overloads, and we have the grant money, and we have some revenue coming in, and reimbursed again by the state for half of the increase amount.
Anybody have any questions?
So you referred to a $300,000 increase as modest.
That's
what I mean, just, I'm trying to get the language right.
Well, no, it's not, it is in this world today, it's $150 an hour, yeah, it is modest.
Okay. Guess I got the answer.
Let's keep going.
Don't use the page.
One good thing, one good thing.
That's why I know about what I eat.
Yes.
We like to stay here now.
Okay.
So we don't trim.
All right. Thank you. Okay, public defender.
Morning.
More definition of modest.
Morning.
Pages 1 and 23 and 24.
Yeah, but I would say the revenue is nearly $1 million. The total budget for the office is $1,650,000. The $650,000 county commitment has stayed pretty flat over the years, which I think is a sign that at least it relates to one thing. The state has kept its promise as far as it promised to fund and change public defense, and it has funded it, and it changed it. But it's certainly funded. Another notable thing, the revenue would not be quite as high, but there was a surprise revenue this year with the DCJS, that's Department of Criminal Justice Services grant for $222,000. I'm not sure if that was in the assigned council revenue, but that $227,000 can be used between the assigned council office and the public defender's office. And so far this year, 2024, it's unallocated. And we expect it to be granted to us for the next 4 years also. So that's supposed to be a 5-year grant, whether
That's per year, or we roll that over every year?
per year. In 2024, we did receive it and we have not allocated it as of yet. That would lead into the expenses where it's all largely contractual with ILS, which is the source of most of that revenue. There is one issue that we have, the contract, the former contracts, ILS was operating on were separated by three separate subjects. They've now combined all that into one contract that they call the single source contract. In that contract, we've been included $50,000 for a full-time investigator. I think we wanted the investigator when we were negotiating the change to the contract, but in further discussions with staff, the attorneys who will actually be using the investigator, I think we're of the opinion that we don't want the investigator at this point, and that we will get more out of the $50,000 using it with outside contractors, as opposed to trying to create a new position, in-house investigator, full-time with the $50,000 they're offering in the contract. So my suggestion on that would be that we have an internal meeting with the members that ordinarily meet with ILS, and then we schedule a meeting with ILS and try to change the contract. Because I don't think we need a new full-time investigator, and I don't think it will actually offer us better services than utilizing private investigators. And over the last 5 years, this year we're on pace to spend about 20,000, but in 2023, we spent 16, in 2022, 9, 2021, 17,000. I just don't think it will serve the office to create a new in-house investigator position if we continue to have outside services funded.
So we're always changing the parameters of the contract as long as everyone's agreeable.
Usually,
So I
yeah.
think Tom said he had an area where he can't spend his either, which makes the revenue fictitious if we can't spend it.
Right,
So-
because it goes back to.
So when we have that meeting, can we make sure that happens? We figure out where it is that his was
Yes.
bottled up to, so we can get it in a line that we're using.
If we could fully fund an in-house investigator if we use some of the DCJS money. But I don't think it's in the best interest of the office to create the full-time investigator position, and that's based on input from the attorneys who use the investigators.
In the lazy costs.
So at the risk of throwing a tomato at me, like, you've got the 223 DCJS money in your revenues.
Yes.
Do you also have expenses budgeted or?
No.
Yet to be determined?
Yet to be determined.
So we either have to remove the revenue or add the expense.
Yeah.
They have to be linked.
Okay, well, if you remove the revenue, it would just go into.
And then we would add it later when
Add
the
it
spending.
next year.
Yes. That's just the process for grants. It's okay if you have it in there, if you have the expense against it too.
Yeah.
But since the expense isn't against it, we have to wait until.
I mean, we have the money.
Sure.
And I think it just automatically goes over, right? You don't have to return.
So
that.
budget wise, we need both sides or neither.
Okay. Do
And
we
would
have
just-
anything to
would just-
spend it on right now?
We would just spend it once you have a spending.
Now, it could be used, Terry with information technology will be able to use it.
And we would just add it when that plan comes to fruition.
Okay.
Sorry, Brian.
Yeah. Well, there's large software expenses I think we're looking at. And if there's unallocated revenue, that might be able to be used for that. I do have a travel plan. I brought copies, I don't know how. One's official. Thank you. We don't travel a lot and we travel locally and we often use our own vehicles. It's anticipated that there is a in-state training that we sign up for and travel to. The travel costs are pretty low and they are funded by ILS. So, if there is travel in 2025, it's ordinarily in-state and it is funded, and I will advise the Public Safety Committee in advance of any proposed travel.
For we were talking last year, great, about increasing complexity of the cases and the need for outside expert witnesses, that sort of stuff. Is that gonna change? Is your workload gonna change quite a lot with great metal going away? Or is it those complex cases not rated by the prison?
Well, you could get a complex case out of the prison, but they weren't necessarily complex. However, we'll certainly have less prison felonies. There was a time when we had a healthy number of felonies out of the prison. That'll decrease. But as Mr. Chaffee noted when he was speaking, family court just continues to rise and rise and rise. And our office does have an obligation of family court as well. And it's our largest volume of files. So the prison files are definitely going to go away or
So
certainly
the thing
decrease.
that's seemed most unpredictable in your budget for the last couple of years has been when a complex trial comes up and you need to hire, outside experts. And is that changing? Is that getting better? Is that getting worse?
Well, I think it's in a good place because part of the single source contract is a healthy line of funding for those extras. And actually, in the last few years, they've been funding that and we haven't had to use it, thankfully. But when we don't use this ILS funding, it's unrealized revenue because either they offset it by not sending the revenue or we have to actually send it back. So any place we're not spending, we should look at trying to reallocate. But I don't think that line, although we haven't spent it, I don't think we can touch that line. It's a 25,000 and I think that's, yes, and that's the right amount, I think, to start. Yes.
It's 222.
I think it's 222. I'm not sure where the other file comes from.
Anyone have any questions? Revenues, expenses? Okay.
And I would just make clear, I'll have discussions internally and then we'll schedule a meeting with ILS, which could change this contract, which would necessarily probably change the budget. But I'll keep the public safety committee up to date on the progress.
Yeah, keep me up.
I will. Thank you. Thank you.
No staffing, right?
No, unless that there's the investigator.
Yeah.
Could result in it, but I don't think we're gonna go that direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We got
That revenue looks so good. until you don't
public
get it.
safety. We'll let you call the pages on whatever. order
No,
you
no,
want.
no, I'm letting you go. You're
I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to-
I'm
I'm
not interrupting. you.
Yes, it
You're
was.
doing-
It was
you're
a
doing
snub you,
good
yeah.
job. Yeah, I know.
Who's in charge?
I know.
Yeah,
Hi.
Morning.
All right.
they should be awake. I gave them candy.
All right. Any chance we could start with?
Sure.
Discussion of the-
Go for it.
So Terry is here. So relative to the ongoing replacement project of the CAD mobile and RMS system. I think we feel collectively as the organization side, IT, us, on public safety, the sheriff's office, that we're ready to move forward. Or to push that replacement project forward, that we've done quite a bit of research between meeting with vendors and doing demos with our staff, the sheriff's staff. And not only that, more importantly, talking to some of our neighbors and other customers out there that have used some of these systems. That we feel comfortable in asking to progress forward with a waiver of the procurement policy. To be able to move forward with a vendor that we feel best fits the needs of the organization or the users that have to use it. And when I say users, I mean everyone, right? All of your fire and EMS agencies, all of the law enforcement agencies in the county that rely significantly on this, on top of the 911 center staff that use it every day. So Terry is here. Terry has done the majority of the financial discussions, and the contract discussions with the vendor. So.
Questions?
Brian, would you move down until we got room enough for another chair?
I'll gladly give her my chair.
Any questions I come up, I'll stand right there.
We'll quite understand.
I would say, I mean, if you have questions, so the vendor,
Speaking of-
Dan, who said the name?
Yes.
Yes. So Tyler Technologies is the vendor that we're asking to move forward with. Tyler Technologies is the vendor that I think the county is very familiar with, that we use other systems of theirs. One of the main concerns for us operationally, I don't want to speak for the sheriff, but certainly for us has been support, right? It is the most critical system that we have in the entire county. Every fire truck, ambulance, and law enforcement officer helps get where they go because of that system. And I can certainly say that what we have today has been successful for the last 10+ years because of the employees that we have that have navigated the issues dealing with that system and the support that we've had internally from IT and from Lieutenant Lemery at the sheriff's office. Like, we put a considerable amount of work into keeping the system going. The vendor has been more responsive as of late, but there still are a number of concerns that not only IT have, but we have operationally that we continue to navigate every day. So support, right? That's our biggest question. The other thing that we really looked at with this is who else is using it and how can we harness the ability to use our neighboring agencies? So you all know that we work very closely with Warren County. So our backup 911 system, we have a split 911 system. We have half, Warren County has half. That's for a very good reason, that if something happens to our building here, we can pick up and relocate over to Warren County's backup center. Here in Washington County, we do not have the luxury of having our own backup 911 center. They're nice enough to allow us to use theirs. So with half of the system sitting in both places, that allows us that disaster recovery functionality of being able to pick up and be there if we need to, or them here. They use the same system, so Rensselaer County just moved forward with a project to use the same system. There are a lot of functions that I think we can harness, CAD to CAD transfers, those kind of things. So if we're taking calls for other counties or them us, that they can transfer that data to us. Where now we're tying up each other with phone calls and radio calls back and forth. But the functionality and the long-term stability of the product, we don't feel that it's going anywhere. I mean, it's only going to continue to grow for the future for us. I mean, I will tell you, our staff, this is the heartbeat of the 911 center. Everything they do uses this system, so it is critical. When it doesn't work, it is a significant impact to our staff and really to the people on the outside. Right? If you want to talk operationally or anything, any concerns you have, Terry, I would feel free to add them.
Yeah, I would just say that Tyler, through this whole process, has just been really good to work with. We're really hopeful for things in the future as well. What was the other one? The Clinton, Essex, and Franklin County also just went with Tyler. I thought I mentioned that as well. The same platform that we'd like to move forward with. I think it's very good.
On the CAD side, so they haven't done RMS and mobile yet. Rensselaer County's doing a full implementation like we are, CAD, RMS, and mobile. And again, this would replace everything that's currently existing. On the fire and EMS side, we've never become operational with the mobile side of things that we hope to from the beginning of this project. On the law enforcement side, the sheriff's office has been operational with it for a long time. The village PDs, we had one or two that participated here or there. This would provide an opportunity for all of the village PDs to participate.
So it's a cost.
Yeah, I wanted to get onto
We
the
wanna hear
cost
the
part.
cost.
So he did all the good stuff, Melissa's ready
So-
to.
I'll give you my
Just to, I guess, mirror what you said, right? It's a 5-year contract, Tyler. So there's initial cost. Nothing's gonna affect the 2025 budget, from what I understand, right? But we are,
Yeah, Tyler's been
That's
very
why you buy
good.
it now.
Tyler's been great at negotiating with us in terms of, working with us in terms of price. They have really made some big concessions, from their initial proposal to be able to be competitive and, bring us to a better spot. They've also agreed to do an initial 14-month contract, so we have no impact on, or not contract, I'm sorry, 14-month term, so that we have no impact on the 2025 budget. So the renewal will be January to December, it'll run calendar year, and the next cost after the initial will be, January 26th.
so when is the initial due?
We would be moving forward, yeah, I guess we're looking to do it where it has to come from here, go to the board and be able to sign a contract for November 1st.
Okay, and that's the $625,000.
Yeah, so they have-
805.
625,805 are the one-time costs.
Okay.
And then 249,22 is the first year cost. So the costs are billed out, the 249,22 would be due, he was gonna do within 60 days for us, so we have a little bit longer from the time that we signed to be able to move that forward. And the one-time costs are billed in stages, so they do it in phases as they're incurred. So some are travel, some are training, so there's a lot of different costs that are involved in that, and they are billed as they happen.
Any questions?
Yeah, so what's the total check we gotta write?
875,027.
John?
It's a big butt,
And
you
it's
know,
fund
to
balance.
really think about it, we looked at $1 million is
Fund
what we've been
balance, right?
planning on for this project for a long time now. And with, I personally think with the cost of everything these days, you know, having been gone up, and we've been looking at this project on that $1 million threshold for a long time now. So I think, you know, I know it's a lot of money, but I think it's a really good product.
We'll have you sign it.
Al?
Word it out.
So
Done.
I'll defer to Supervisor first.
Just what is this gonna enhance? A 911 system, communications? Just what specifically?
So honestly, this will replace what we have existing today. So the incident management system that we use, every single 911 call that comes in here, every call that's processed, the call handling portion of it, the actual relaying of information outside of here, the documentation that starts with us in the 911 center, that goes to the sheriff's office, the state police, your field agencies, will replace. And I say enhance everything because we're not using it. We've never been able to use it to its full potential. The current system that we have, either because it's exceeded its full potential, I guess, for lack of better terms. But the other part to remember is we're moving towards next gen 911, so this increases and it's already prepared to start taking in things like we're taking text to 911 now. We're manually entering those into the CAD system, right? There's no way for us to automatically get that stuff in. Relative to location information, interfaces exist now that don't exist today with the current system to other systems that we're having to use to get location information, those kind of things.
Huge security improvement.
Interesting, I was listening to the scanner and somebody called on their cell phone 911, left it open. And within seconds, they were tracking that phone. I thought that was,
We get lots of those every day.
and that's included in all this system.
Yes. So that works in conjunction with the secondary system that we have now that doesn't integrate with what we have, anything new. Obviously, we're looking towards maximizing the potential of everything we do. So if we have a system that currently works and they're two operating standalone, how we integrate those things in the future. Right now, it's more work, right? We're manually taking that stuff from one place and putting it somewhere else. So the ability to integrate.
I mean, most all of us, maybe they're way ahead of me, but I'd be blind on what we're purchasing if I didn't ask a question like that.
I mean, we all know this is, when I tell you that this is the core of what the 911 center does, it is. Right, we're one user, we're probably the largest user because we use it every day, all the time. Every minute of the day, right, the second largest user is sitting over here, the sheriff. Certainly, it is the backbone of what they do too, right? All of their systems, everything is logged through there. It's a big cost. You know, the one thing I can tell you is hopefully 10 years from now, we're not replacing this, right? So we don't have another huge number. We have the ongoing number that will always be there, but that includes all of the upgrades and things for the future. So hopefully, 10 years from now, I'm not talking another $800,000 purchase. We're talking about continuing whatever the number is, and I know that's not cheap either. But this is a significant investment in not only our people here, but what we do, but the infrastructure that supports it.
The goal was really to find the application that would work for everything now and have the potential to work in the future, so that we don't ever have to pull across this bridge again. And the vendor is responsive to everything that we need.
They're the industry leader.
Well, their maintenance costs is high enough, so I'd be the industry leader.
Right.
It's for my safety.
I have Al, and then Jay, then Sue, then Dave, and Nate. Al, you're up.
So for those of you who've been around for the capital plan discussions, we do have this in the capital plan of $1 million for 2025. So this is a known commodity, right? The other, so if you choose to move forward with this, I basically think you have two options, right? So I have 1.2 million in the contingency in the capital plan, capital project now. You can hit that for the 875,027, knowing that I'll come back to you in May when I close the books with hat in hand, asking for, you know, a part or all of the surplus to, and we want to keep funding that capital plan. So if you hit that now, just know that I'll come back to you in May and say, Mother, may I, right? Or you can just hit fund balance now for the 875 and leave the 1.2 in the capital. Those are the two funding options I feel you have in front of you if you move with this.
Which one do you prefer?
I wouldn't mind you tapping the 1.2 now and let me come back to you in May with how we ended the year.
Yeah, motion.
Motion.
Moved by
Second.
Dana.
Aye.
Seconded by Jay and Tim.
And then it goes away from here.
Oh, you didn't say that.
He said it early on, but.
I didn't.
Didn't mention it.
More discussion?
And they are in source.
There were some hands raised. Would you like that discussion first, Jay?
Oh, no, I just want to know, is there cost going to be incurred by our fire departments or our EMS with this new system?
The only cost incurred by them is if they want to procure devices to be on the system. So the county, right, IT is not gonna purchase them computers. So when we talk about what kind of systems, and that's a very important discussion we've had, is we wanna make it as easy as possible, but keep it safe and secure. Obviously, they're gonna be tying into what we do, so we certainly don't want someone connecting from a home computer they bought, you know, off eBay. Right, so there's certain types of devices, there were Android devices and there were iPad devices that will make it very easy for them to connect without having to purchase VPN technology, those kind of things. So we're trying to keep it as simple as possible and not make it any more difficult.
So you don't have sticker shock in 2026. I want you to realize that the maintenance on these contracts that we saw first day was 600,000. That's gonna be $1 million. Just so you all realize what this does to you in 2026. You can't undo it because this is how it's set up. Just know that's where we're at.
Yep.
And you just had the public defender say he wanted to buy all his stuff. We don't know what the maintenance costs on that'll be. That might be covered. So, but that maintenance cost is gonna be a huge number.
Jay asked the question. I was curious how.
Oh,
how that
yeah.
local-
Oh, okay. Dave?
So back 8, 9 years ago, when you chose the current system, Tyler was our preference. And cost there was like 1.2, 1.3. They still had some work to go, and the system has matured quite a bit since then, because there was still work they would have done to make it compatible with what we did. Maintenance cost would still be $200,000 a year.
Nate, did you still have a question?
Yeah, I just wondered how friendly is this to upgrades and compatibility, 5, 6 years from now? Is it easily expandable?
Yeah, so there is a fully hosted solution, so the upgrades and all that are all included. It'll continue to be upgraded, at least twice a year.
Bob?
The function of county government is to take care of the needs of people. And I think that our front line is our 911 system, really. Think about the actual needs for taking care of. So I'm completely on board with doing this and upgrading this. My question has to do with the recurring. You've got it 249 something now from 350, which was good. You are to be commended for your bargaining skills. How many years out does the bargaining skills go? Is that 249 forever? Is that 249 until next week?
Yeah, so there's roughly a 3% increase yearly, and we'll be signing a 5-year contract for that.
So we're 5 years out for 149 plus, sorry, 249, for 249 plus 3.
Melissa?
There was a grant that was applied for also, that I think we're hoping to get an answer on early spring, maybe March, April. And I believe that was $1 million. If we are able to get that grant funding, then that possibly could help with those reoccurring costs
For 3 years.
through this contract. Yeah.
Sam?
Just to build on the chairman's question, so we said it was 249 a year plus 3. So does it mean that whatever that 3% equals to, it's gonna be that new figure plus 3, or is it gonna be at a 249?
So it actually goes up a little bit if I could, so the first year it's 249, 222. And then year 2, it's 263, 262. The same for year 3, year 4 is 271, 160, and year 5 is 279, 295.
The vendor did that to try to keep everything below that 3% cost for us. They've been very responsive and very good to work with.
Makes sense.
Any other questions?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
You stay if you want.
Where do you want to go? I'll let you go.
If we could start with the medical examiners. 1185. Page numbers are different here, so.
Oh, they didn't say page 11.
Everybody hear that? Pages 11 and 85.
Page 2. Page 2, 26 and 27.
You can be 11 and-
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, that's the account number.
Not, no candy for me.
Where are we?
Pick you up at my end, all right?
Now, where are we?
Yeah, page 2, 1185 medical exam. And you can see how much.
This is the 2 candy bar.
No, highlight.
The highlight.
All right.
Highlight.
All right. No candy for me.
Well, since he liked page 2.
It's around page 26.
All right, so if we're talking highlights, notably, there are no significant highlights. I think the changes we made in the coroner's budget last year worked pretty well. And that was the first year we really looked at doing it like this with the help of Sue and the help of Stacy, Sandy, and the coroners. So far, we're okay. We have had to make a couple of moves, so you do see that there are some increases over last year's. We knew that looking at it last year was kind of a shot in the dark on some of these numbers because we weren't tracking them individually prior to that. So anything you see in there is within relative range with no major increases. If there is a major increase in one area, there's a decrease in another area. So where you see like an increase or a decrease in toxicology and testing, some of that we are attributing to the purchase of the new Randox machine that is going to be installed at the hospital next week, which we just found out. So obviously our costs, we are expecting those to drop a little bit. It won't drop completely because there are still toxicology things that Dr. Sikorica will have to order out that we will still have to pay for relative to autopsies and those kind of things. But we do expect some decrease in that, and that'll continue every year after that. The number obviously is left to be determined until we get that far. But we did have to put some increase in there relative to their travel budget. We have 4 active coroners now that are all attending training and they're all traveling more than perhaps before. So we are seeing some increases in that. So we made a couple of moves in this year's budget now and making a couple just to prepare for next year. But as you'll see those numbers, we don't expect anything major.
Do you have any travel plans for them or you want to put them all at the end?
Actually, we do. So the 4 corners. Print as little as possible, but it doesn't have to. There you are. There you are. The 4 corners work together to put their travel plan together. Somewhere. So as of right now, what's made it on their travel plan, anything outside of this will come to committee for request for travel. And the coroner spring conference and the coroner fall conference for all 4 of them. They'd all like to be able to attend. And I will say, I think everybody's been pretty active over the last year relative to, certainly relative to answering calls and more into training than we've seen in the past. I think we would all say that we've seen in the past. Bob, do you have anything you want to add to any of it?
Just so you'll save a little bit because the spring conference is gonna be in Lake George. We're able to finally get a conference in our region.
I would just like to say that I think that it's working out well. This is the first time in a long time we've had all 4 quarters actively involved. and what they're supposed to be doing in many years. And you said that you have one or two that are doing the bulk of the work, and the other ones with one for the ride. So I think this is, speaks well for the management of it and the transition that was made to get them where they are.
I definitely can say, I think the help of getting the new system, and we have all four corners are actively participating in using the new system. We just did another training event not too long ago for the two newest corners to be able to participate with the MDI log folks and go through that. I think communication is doing better, and then meeting with the corners and talking to them, certainly addressing their needs relative to equipment, supplies, those kind of things. I think that it's doing pretty well. Certainly open to anything you want to add, Bob, but it's going pretty well.
Well, I can just tell you one thing, coming down the pipe right now, and they could change the whole landscape of the coroner system. There's a bill that's passed the legislature right now in assembly, that will require a coroner to either be a physician, a physician's assistant, nurse practitioner, a nurse, or someone in the field of science with a Leeds and Associates degree, or a board certified medical legal deputy. If that happens, that's going to trickle across the state, the whole coroner system. I'm on the board for the New York State Coroners and Medical Examiners Association. We proposed our own bill in the Senate that actually makes more sense, and so we're hoping they'll go with our bill, and our bill would consist of 12 credit hours for coroners every 4 years. So you can start the coroner system and keep them active by going through training. We had our lawyers look into the other bill that's there, and it does say by accrediting agency, so if they recognize our association as accrediting agency, we can be accredited to our association, and all coroners would fall under that. Otherwise, it will be a lot of work for all coroners to become medical legal death investigators, national certification. So that's where it's at. It's passed the Senate, hasn't been introduced into the Assembly yet. Our bill will be introduced in the Assembly, and that's the one that will go forward. But just to give you a heads up, what possibly can be coming down.
Steve's been so good on that.
Give us the bill numbers and the text of your bill. We'll put that into our advocacy package for this year. That's kind of significant. Cost-wise for the county down the line.
A8420A. That version of the bill is S9443.
It's got a assembly version.
Yep. Give you the assembly.
Say them again, please, Dan.
The assembly bill is A8420A. Senate version is S9443.
I'm reading it correct. Thank you. And Bob, we'll give you the text of, because your bill hasn't been introduced yet, right?
It's been introduced into the Senate, so I'll have to get it to my senator out in Orleans area.
All right.
But I'll get to that information.
Okay.
You copy me as well, copy me on it, thank you.
Political science, but not rocket science.
No.
That's too bad, because they would let you do it. That would be nice.
Google everything I say.
I don't trust the state. Anything in our favor at this moment.
All right, give our attention back to Tim.
Right. More questions on the corners? All right, can we move to fire? Which is account code 3410.
Page 10.
Income, so the only income they bring in, the sales of fire reports, which we estimate to be at the same it currently is. So moving to expenses, you will not see any major changes there. Working with the fire coordinator, we have taken the budget officer's request into consideration and kept everything as close to the number as it previously was as we possibly could moving forward. Working with Danielle, we do anticipate, this year, there have been some finalizations in the NFPA standards relative to what is required to be a fire investigator and how to conduct fire investigations that, we will be finalizing the job description for the fire investigator trainees, of which there are 2 on the staffing pattern. And they expect to be hired in the next couple of months. Obviously, there is a significant amount of training that goes along with that. So they will be beneficial to us probably in late 2025, other than providing on-scene support and help for the current fire investigators that exist. That was in the staffing pattern prior and in the budget prior and hasn't been used as of yet as we finalize those things. So unless you see something I don't or have any questions relative to something that's in there, there are no surprises in the fire budget.
Pretty good.
Any questions, any personnel, travel, anything like that for them?
Their travel is on the public safety travel.
Okay.
So if we want to hold on to that, other than that, there's no personnel requests. Moving to 3625, the EMS budget.
Page 62. Well, now that I know how you're calling it off, I can find it. Threw me the first time.
So right off of the gate, there's no income in the EMS side of the budget. Right out of the gate, we'll see in the 121 regular earnings, you see that jump to 25,000. So trying to make a transitional change with EMS without costing us any more money. We're trying to look at an outside the box solution where we can lower our training budget number, which we lowered by $11,000 from 50 to 39, and increase the salary for the EMS coordinator and deputy coordinator. When we look to hire the new EMS coordinator and deputy coordinator, we look for 2 very important qualities, one of which was having them be instructors. So the ability to have them provide training to the EMS agencies relative to their ongoing continuing medical education, those kind of things. So we're asking that we can decrease the $11,000 from the training budget and increase their salaries. So that's why you see the 25 is in there. And when we get down to the training, you will see that there is a decrease from the prior 50 down to 39. So while we couldn't say nicely, we couldn't cut significantly, we did look for ways in which we can maximize what we're already doing and lower things and increase in other areas without adding an overall increase. Other than that, there is no surprises in the EMS budget. There's actually nothing more than was in there prior. However, I will add this caveat. So we had approval to apply for the state's new countywide EMS operations grant last year. We have not received any notification. We did apply for that in the amount of $500,000. That included an initiative to start an ALS first response program and provide for EMS gap coverage in areas in which ambulance coverage doesn't exist or needs assistance, for lack of better terms, which we would contract with existing EMS agencies, not purchase our own ambulances and those kind of things. Right, the ALS first response program is something that the county would run. Included in that, there are costs that we can purchase a lot of things. We can purchase vehicles, we can pay for people. We cannot pay for things like uniforms. We cannot pay for things like prescription medications that we would need to be able to provide. So we may need a contingency amount of money that we can purchase those things to be able to get those programs off the floor. However, we did not want to put it in the budget because it doesn't exist if we don't get the award from the grant. So, right.
Good job.
That's kind of where we're at. We are hoping to have that award soon. And I'm hoping at next month that we can come back and tell you that we've heard something in favor of that. I mean, I think we know those of you that have participated in the MS workforce group in the sustainability project, we know that this is a very important initiative. We also know that there's no funding for this right now. I think this would be an outrageous shot in the arm for our system locally to get things started. From there, it would cost, significant amount of money to keep going. But all of your communities, certainly in the future, are going to benefit from that, and long-term will become more reliant on your EMS agencies as you look forward.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Next.
All right, so on to public safety. Looking at our revenue.
Pages 10 and 11.
No expected difference in the revenue, with the exception of the budget officer does usually put in some of the grant amounts that we haven't put in because we haven't received the awards yet. But just to remind you, like when we look at things like the CAD project, we do have income that comes in public safety that other departments don't have, that go back either towards the general fund or go direct toward the operation. So number one right there is the wireless telephone 911 surcharge. So when you look at money that comes in, like we do bring in around $205,000, give or take, every year that comes in from 911 surcharge money. We don't do anything special with that. That goes into the big picture. Also, keep in mind the 911 PSAP operation grant, which has been 143, 147. It's bounced around a couple of years. 100% of that goes back into our personnel budget. We don't take and do anything else with that either. And so there is something that are put back into the operation that, I mean, significantly, if we're looking for money to earmark and say, right, how do we pay for certain things, right? We could look at that money and say, well, you can mark it whatever you want. It comes in and it goes back into the operation. Which those are things that we all work very closely with the treasurer on, right? The treasurer participates and oversees all of those things. We try and harness the grant money wherever we can. When we talk about the significant upgrades that we've been able to do with the radio system, without the state grant money, that would have cost us millions of dollars in local money. And we're still harnessing that to build out a radio system now that was completely aging and falling apart 5 years ago. We've been able to harness those grant funds significantly, not only to provide upgrades for us, but to provide upgrades at every one of the tower sites, which benefits, you know, your community, fire and EMS responders. And we've done some significant upgrades for the sheriff's office that we're still in process. We've got a bunch that are already done and we have a bunch more that are coming to improve communications. So we are very happy that hopefully that state money will keep going, and we'll keep that moving forward without us having to use local money. So going down through, if you don't have any questions on the income. Going down through expenses.
66.
$267.
All right.
3640.
I paid 63.
Well, you know, when your glasses are bad, it looks like a 6.
Well, I only have page 2 of 6, so your numbers are gonna help a lot more than
No, you didn't work.
so expenses, there are no unanticipated increases in personnel. Everything in there is contractual. The only thing you will see in the overtime, right? We have 32,000 in the overtime 2.0, which is their holiday double super time. Just general increases there, nothing major. In the overtime budget, we went from 250 to 260. We know in the next year, we are continuing to try and bolster our per diem staff, which just means training and more training. But we're up the same things that we've been up against in the past years of new people and retaining new people who want to stay and work nights and weekends and holidays, has been inherently difficult. We have had 2 in the last 6 months that were both actually progressing and doing very well and did not like being stuck inside and did not like working nights, weekends and holidays, regardless of they like the job. You know, some of the stress certainly was a factor there. So we know that that's going to increase. We're just trying to account for that. When we look down a little bit further, there are no other significant increases that you will see in anything that we have at all. If anything, we tried to cut wherever we could. Our maintenance contract may have gone up a tiny bit, but that's only because the cost that we have to pay for the services that are in there. Our maintenance contracts, either with our radio tower systems, our scheduling systems, the cost of everything unfortunately is going up. But when you kind of think about all of the systems that operate under the hood, if you look at the maintenance contract line, you can see that there's a whole lot of things and parts and pieces in there that you might not normally think about if we didn't parts and piece it out. All of which are really critical to what we do, either within the public safety structure here at the county as a whole, or back into your communities. Do you have any questions on anything in there? All right, so the last thing I have is, we can do that travel budget if you want, and then just talk about the first. All right, travel plan for public safety, which includes fire, EMS, ADMAT. You. One of the nice things is we do have some travel and training that is funded completely by the state or funded by state grant, which we harness those capabilities. So we try and limit the use of budgeted training funds wherever possible. Obviously, that's not completely possible to not do any training without having to pay some funding. We are cautious and do train wherever we can virtually. However, there are some opportunities that we can't do everything virtually, and we have to do some in person. So on there are no surprises other than what is on there. If there's anything that's not on there, we certainly will bring it to committee like we normally do. Any questions on anything?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
What's UAS?
Unmanned aerial systems, drones.
Did you have candy?
That's from the Snickers.
No. Al? Did you have
No,
enough?
thank you, Chair.
Oh, I heard a question too. Anybody else have a question? Okay.
All right, so on to our one personnel item. So this year, in talking with Danielle and talking with Melissa, we know, all of you, especially in your towns, know that the increase in workload on what we're all being required to do from the state level relative to emergency planning and response is continuing to come up relative to either preparedness efforts, response efforts, or mitigation as we're dealing with hazard mitigation and everything else. We have identified that we have a need in some support level on the emergency management side of the house. Certainly, there will be a need on the 911 side, which I think we're probably looking more towards next year. On the emergency management side, though, it's busy. All of you have seen us at some point, probably in the last year, if not more than once. And it's just the two of us, right? It's Glenn and myself on the emergency management side. We try and harness partnerships and other things as much as we can. Over the last few years, I think the working relationship between our office and the safety officers has increased significantly. I think we've seen a couple of things that have brought that to light. And while our jobs are different, there are a lot of similarities in which we align on things relative to the four components of, if you think outside the box, right, we're just not 911. That is the biggest component of what we do, but that's not what we do every day, right? We have a good group of people that do that every day. The components of the emergency management side are preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. And when you look at those kind of things, everything kind of falls into that box. Those are things most people don't see. Everybody sees the response side. But you don't see Glenn and myself typically running to a fire or an incident unless it's a major incident, right? A lot of that work happens behind the scenes, or it happens prior to or afterwards. So when we looked at that need and said, well, certainly we all got the same message from the budget officer that we needed to figure out where we could cut costs. And we said, how do we go and ask for another person? Even though we need another person, do we ask for it now? So in talking with Melissa and in talking with Danielle, we said creatively, how can we come up with something where we can harness maybe other existing resources in a different place that we are working with every day, and a lot of people don't know it. A lot of people do. So we came up with a discussion of maybe we should talk about looking to see if the safety officers and doing some cross training with them could provide some assistance for us and provide some sustainability and long-term support for the safety program as a whole. When you look at this and think, how does it support the everyday mission of what the safety officers do in the county? I can give you, a couple of my own answers. I mean, I can tell you long-term, we don't look at fire and EMS as employees of the county because the majority of them aren't, but they are a significant part of what we do on an everyday basis. They're not all of what we do, but in your communities and the way that we respond and handle these things, they're huge. Right? We started talking about the OSHA changes coming, whether or not they actually pass and make it through. Significantly, responder health and wellness is a core part of what we need to take a more active role in. And I think there is a lot of synergy there. Additionally, when you look at those guys, there's a lot of synergy in the training that we provide on the outside level of the county and that they provide on the inside level. And I know some of you have seen in the last couple of years, when there's been a gap in the safety office, right? You've seen Glenn or myself either providing training or support there. So we came to the discussion of, can we look at the potential of reallocating the safety officers as part of public safety without costing anything additional to us as a whole? And not changing the structure and what they do. Like, we're not asking that they be assigned to us to answer phones or do that, right? We would use the ability to cross-train them in the things that you see Glenn and myself do in your communities to show up and support you and your other folks. I'm actually happy to see that Deb Donahue is walking in the back over there, because I think Deb Donahue is a key part of, we have a good partnership with DPW, I would say. And I think that DPW knows, if you want to talk about, are you going to worry about getting the same level of service you need from them where they sit now to where they sit coming to us? I'll let Deb answer that question herself, but we work very closely together with every department in this county. And I'd like to say that we don't say that it's any one person. We have a real goal of providing whatever you need to you as best we can. Whether that's your town DPW, which you can talk to all your town superintendents, right? They work with us, they work with them. Whether it's you as elected officials or it's other department heads here at the county. I think that this is an opportunity to look at something that's already here without costing us any extra money and seeing if it's a way we can make it work and, fill a need without changing priorities.
Melissa would like to add to it.
And I think that the way that public safety's brought this forward, Tim and Glenn, it's been a way to be able to, fill a need that they both departments have, without costing the county more money and creating new positions. When Tim brought this to me, I had extensive conversations, especially with the two departments involved, to see how they could actually benefit each other. It was no surprise to me, they do work closely together, they have been. And both departments have changed significantly over the years. Both have gone from a reactive, everyday occurrence to actually they're proactive. And I've seen that in both the departments probably over the last 5 years significantly. So I think it was worth bringing this forward to all of you, see if you approve. But I think it makes sense for both departments to have that relationship. I think it will make it easier for them. And when two department heads feel pretty strongly that they can benefit by working closely together, I think it's worth listening to. And that's why we're bringing it to you today, to see if there is an appetite to move the safety officers under public safety. I don't think at this time we'd physically be looking to move their office, but just to be able to bring them underneath that umbrella as requested by literally all the employees involved.
And they'll still be paid out of workers' comp.
Yes.
Correct, yeah.
And workers' comp is what really is behind all this, because we're all paying the cost, towns, villages, county.
Yes.
I disagree with that. I think the main cost is the safety of our employees. It's not.
No, I'm just saying how we're all related though.
I understand.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. No, I'm just saying that it goes down to every
Yes,
level.
it does, right?
So it really is just a staffing pattern change, but it really, there's no budgetary.
Questions?
And CDF personnel.
Yes, great. I need somebody on public safety to move this to personnel. Moved by Sue. Oh, you're not on public safety.
I am.
Moved by Jim, seconded by John.
Can I ask you one question? As a person whose staffing pattern is going to be affected. No one's asked me a question at all.
So you want to make a statement?
Is that a question?
I do. I know it's not gonna get very far. But I'm gonna make it. One of the last things that Roger told me before he went out the door was this was probably going to happen at some point. And the discussions were with the safety officers and with public safety. No discussion was had with me until we had the meeting on Friday. As Sam stated, a lot of this is about workplace safety. And workplace safety goes to corporate compliance and liability. And that usually falls my doorstep. Putting another layer, especially if, God forbid, we have a sexual harassment claim between safety officers and me, or my staffing pattern, that could be problematic. As the chairman said at meeting on Friday, the reach, I know he talked about, and Vice Chairman talked about risk management as eventually having an overall global reach within the county. The departments that kind of have that global reach right now are the administrator, the treasurer, my office. So, as I said, I understand the board's going to do what they want to do. I understand that there may be some budgetary savings. But I do feel very strongly safety officers should stay with me. That's my statement.
Alyssa?
I'd just like to, I guess, react a little bit of your concern. I will be very involved with both departments as I am now. Currently, all the departments in the county, if we have legal questions, concerns, liability issues, we currently come to the county attorney. We always have. I don't see that happening. I think the mission of both the departments is going to stay the same. They're going to utilize the resources that they have available to them now. It's not going to change, whether it's the administrator, the personnel officer, or the county attorney. If at any time we see that this is not working, we're certainly going to bring this forward and ask to look at it again if there's a better solution. But by no means are we trying to cut out the county attorney or that role as far as liability, because that's a concern of both of those departments. Always has been.
I would indicate, I asked the other day what's broken with the system, and I was not given an answer.
So here is what I'm hearing. Public safety has a need for another person. I'm assuming it's full-time, not part-time. Help them complete their mission. We have 2 safety officers. You look back to history of them, they made a huge impact on workman's comp and the safety of our employees. So my biggest concern when I hear this is we're not really dealing with the issue. What we're talking about doing is taking cycles from 2 safety officers, where I assume are busy all the time, doing their stuff, out managing things, take some of their cycles and give them public safety. Why aren't we biting the bullet and taking care of what the real problem is public safety? You look at what they do, where they go. I mean, Tim sending emails at 4 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock at night. I don't know when the guy ever sleeps. But why aren't we addressing the real issue, getting public safety what they need to do their job? I'm not as much concerned as where the public safety officers live. And I think cross-training is great. I think they do a great job working together right now. Most of the time when Tim's out, public safety officer out too. Why are we dealing with real issues? Why would that potentially cut the cycles of people and give them to someone else? That's a huge problem for me. We're gonna have that conversation in a short time.
No, I guess that's what he is doing. He is addressing it. That's exactly the plan that's in place to do that.
But it's not.
And leveraging the assets we already have. As
But
for
he's
Dan,
essentially taking cycles.
Sam has the floor.
as for the concern that Dan has with the corporate aspect of it, you already assume that liability because you don't have the Department of Social Services under you. You don't have any other department under you that has to do the safety things within their things. So, you know, it's one department you're talking about, and you have responsibility for whatever happens in any of those departments. Okay, so you're talking about one, but you're not, you know, you're isolating on one, and this would better serve all of those departments. Just the observation.
Tim?
So one of the reasons that you look at this, and this really came to light during COVID, right? When we looked around and said, who has a good understanding and working knowledge of things under the hood, right? Safety officers have a very good working understanding of things that happen within the structure here. if I had the ability to have 4 people that have trained across lines to be able to perform basic duties to carry out a mission, or 2 people or 3 people, I would rather train 4 people to carry out the basics of a mission. When we look at our operation and say, retention is huge, right? Recruitment is even worse. Let's talk about, right, the safety officer position. There has been difficulty in the past recruiting for that position where it is today. We have difficulty recruiting in certain positions. We may open up a whole different interest from folks there. To get back to what Mr. O'Brien said, would we take another full timer? Absolutely. We would take a whole year to train somebody to the level where we can have them be some use to us, right? A whole year. That's a lot, right? That's a lot of time of one of us spent training them, right? This isn't a job that you walk into. It took me a long time to get up to speed. It took Glenn a long time to get up to speed, and we came from within the organization, right? We are struggling to recruit. If we could look at this and say, we have 2 like-minded individuals that think like us, and we think like them. When you show up on a situation and you want to talk about risk or you want to talk about safety, there are a lot of things inside the building that we're responsible for and participate in, that the safety officers are a participant in, but they're not responsible for. Let's talk about upgrading the fire alarm system, right, that we're working with Matt on, access control, right? They're all part of this big thing. And I think that's kind of what we may be missing on big picture. And I understand, right? I'm just here providing you with information and saying, we have an out of the box solution that may not cost us any money. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You go back to the well. There are other counties, and you can look at all the ones out there. There are some in which they live in emergency services, and they're a component of that. There are some in which they live in the county attorney or personnel or somewhere else. I think that this is an ability to say, if we have the opportunity to have 4 like-minded individuals, we can cross-train and provide a level of support without adding an extra cost to it right now, and not adding the fact that we're training somebody nonstop. I'm not sure, as certainly as part of the department head figure, where we wouldn't look at that opportunity, which is why it's been here. And I certainly understand Dan's concern, but right now, I just want you to know, if there's an incident in this building right now, and the safety officers aren't here, one of us respond to that, Glenn or myself, right? Slip and fall, whatever it is. Obviously, if it's a law enforcement incident, the sheriff responds to that. But there is a structure that was actually put in place when Roger was still here. And it was heavily discussed when somebody was going to be out, how these things would continue on. And that structure actually was built out of that. And obviously I know, because I participated in those discussions with Roger and Melissa, right? When we looked at that and said, continuity of what we do is huge. Having a program, whether it's safety, public safety, preparedness, if we can't carry that forward past me being here, then I'm not doing my job, right? I should want better for the long term, not for 2 years, not for 5 years. And when I look at this, I'm thinking about the more we know and share with each other to make sure things don't get dropped when someone's not here, or so someone can take a vacation and make sure that their duties are continuing to get done. Or when another department needs support, a town or village, which is what our entire role is here, right? As public safety, we support everybody. That's your towns and villages, that's the other departments here. We have we're really blessed to have good working relationships with the sheriff's office and with places like social services and public works. And you can talk to them yourself, right? They know if they call, they get whatever support they need, right? That's the one thing that our team totally prides themselves on, is making sure that happens. And I don't think you're going to see any loss of service here to anyone involved. I really don't.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you're gonna have to train somebody to your tires.
Hopefully not to the extent that we would with this resource being in public safety. That's part of the thought, is the succession plan and the resources that would be available.
Yeah,
Okay, in simple terms.
what's on the floor is
Yeah.
moving it to personnel, swinging the safety officers, physically leaving them where they are, but reporting into public safety so they can start training back and forth.
They can't do the same training when they're under the.
Well, I think they were trying to move it in, so in some cases, there's like times
I
when
mean, I
these guys
guess
get
what
the
would be the
information.
reason to move it out? Money, different line item for money? What?
It really just cuts out a layer. It cuts out one department head trying to talk to an employee that it works under a different department. If they can just communicate and work with each other, we had a thing, the Triple E notice that went out this week. That was a prime example of that. It's something that when Tim got the information on it, can be shared with safety officers right away as well, instead of trying to go over a different, through another department head to talk.
Oh,
Just
he
makes
can
it
walk in and
more
talk to the
efficient.
guys in Dan's office, because it'd be going over Dan's head.
It's just more efficient to be able to just talk to your own people, more so than it is to talk to somebody in different.
It's been tossed about for years,
Yeah.
over and over, and at this time, I think we have really good people in the 4 positions, and if it's gonna work, it's gonna work now, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. You can reevaluate it and put it back. I think that's part of, it's been talked about and talked about. Try it, if it doesn't work, put it back.
Chairman?
I think my position is pretty well known in here. I don't think we ought to be anywhere. I think we ought to make a corporate decision to get into risk management like we ought to in this century, but that's gonna take a little bit and a little bit of resources and things, so I hate seeing an issue where we've got, 2 departments feeling bad. Safety officers, since I've been here, we've gone now right around the police circle. They were in public safety when I got here. And then they went to personnel, and Kevin had him for a little while. And then they went to, I think the next step was to counsel's office. Saying, well, we're gonna switch them and then reevaluate and see how it works and maybe put them somewhere else. I think it's a bad message to send to our safety officers. And, I guess I'm having trouble deciding whether I feel like it ought to move or not. They're both very persuasive sorts of things, and my leaning is, my ex-cop background, I'm always, leaning towards public safety, but, I can't help that. However, if you're gonna do it one way or another and get it done. Maybe if I stay alive, I'll convince some of you guys we ought to be thinking about risk management a little more seriously, more globally. And the whole problem is solved here in a year or two. Just, if you're gonna do it, get it the first now, get it done.
You stay alive.
The only thing I'd say about
wear
it,
me down.
we have very,
I'm buying a motorcycle, I'm taking more chances.
we have very specific people and they're all very good.
Do I?
We have very specific people and they're all very good. So my only question is globally, if those specific people are missing, who takes their place? Does the same format work? That's the way I look at it. But I mean, we have 4 really good people here, right? So if, 2 of them are missing and you have 2 other different people in, how does the format work? I guess that's the way I would look at it.
No, the whole
And I don't have an answer.
The whole problem is these 2 departments focus on different things. When different things come up, one's gonna be better suited than the other to handle that.
Yes.
If we're talking about some of the risk management stuff that is interpersonal, Dan's office is certainly, it's got to take the lead. They've got to have some internal security and confidentiality and that sort of thing. And certainly when it comes to reactive, tactical stuff, obviously, public safety is a heck of a lot better than, and they ought to be. We ought to expect them to be. And I'm not sure that those 2 balances, one outweighs the other. That's my problem. With it, I would be perfectly happy if they're in public safety, and I'm perfectly happy where they are right now. And I guess I can't, I mean, probably a poor way to lead as the chairman, but I don't see, in my mind, a good way from one to the other. Yeah, I'd have trouble making. I'm glad I'm not on the first elder. I'd have trouble making up my mind on both.
So Daryl must have us on candid camera because he sent a message to let us know that he supports the vote.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was my next statement. Daryl's sending me notes that, he needs to support the public safety.
We have a motion and a second on the floor to move it to personnel and harass it again. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. On yours, Sam.
Personnel, got it.
Yes. Done, send us a picture. I need to get the whole bag in.
Thank you.
Excellent. Up in your way, Dan. 2 or 3 of them and you're happy.
I might have been happier if I got them.
I told you when I came in, I thought it was pretty cool.
Or you end up putting on weight like me, dude. I've already done that too.
You burned up, the stress. All right, next one up. Tony.
Look, there.
I looked at the bag of Tum Tums. And I said,
No, I know that came from you.
and I'm like, no, can't bring Dum Dums to me.
So
All
thank
right.
you.
Yeah, so it looks like it's on page 1 and page 22 and 23.
And as you're getting there, if I could just hit on maybe a couple of highlights that I think are important to understand, both for where we are and where I think we might be going in the criminal justice, public safety area. Through August of this year, our new cases, which would be misdemeanors and felonies, open are up 11.7%. And this is after about a 19% increase in 23 over 22. Although those numbers are certainly significant in and of themselves, I think what's more important is the violence that we're seeing around the county. I know the sheriff is still here, so they deal with a lot of that, but it's just new and different violence that we're not accustomed to seeing in Washington County. Including we've had the name gang assaults doesn't mean it's gangs, but it's multiple people that are taking significant violence toward another person or persons, and they've tended to be drug debt collection related tactics that perhaps were more common in urban settings. We're starting to see here in our village streets. So I think a continued commitment by the sheriff and all to really address the challenges is important for our communities because it is significant.
Can you quantify that, Tony? Are we up 10%? Are we up 20%?
Crimes. So year to date, our new files open, which would be misdemeanors and felonies. August 31st, 24 versus August 31st, 23, we're up 11.7%. And what we're seeing really is we've always had challenges with drugs. We see a lot of overdoses. We see a continued challenge with addiction. But I think the volume and quantity of drugs and that activity over the last couple of months has really jumped. We had state police had a stop in Greenwich a couple of nights ago, almost 100 grams, which is 3.5 ounces of crack cocaine. And then multiple kilos were seized just recently on the border of Washington and Warren County. And so we had a case back in the summer, over 4 ounces of cocaine in Hebron, and a lot of that's getting moved to our schools. So I think the continued effort, believe it or not, I think we're in a better position than many, but it really is a significant challenge. The thing I would add though, and I'm scratching my head, and I've been working with Ryan in IT a little bit to figure out, but I've noticed a significant increase in investigations into financial fraud. People being subjected to email scams, phone scams, text scams, and it's an astronomical number. Our Washington County residents, 23 and 24, so this isn't going back before that, we're at almost $1 million that people have been scammed out of in the last, 20 months. And so, that awareness is difficult. It's time consuming. Our law enforcement does a nice job with it. We do a lot of subpoenas and reviewing that information, but it really is a problem. And, anything that you can do in your town certainly would help to get the message out. But Ryan often does email blasts to the county, encouraging us to share those. And I really would, because
They are fear-driven and they do a really good job. Smart, competent, capable people are falling prey to these. And so it's definitely on the rise. But with that, just sort of as a backdrop, is the challenges. I did have a question before I jump into my budget. When I prepared this, I wasn't sure. The budget officer challenged us all for a 3% cut. And we had, I think it's called breakage, but we were down 2 attorneys for a good chunk of the year, which by my math resulted in a salary breakage of about $164,000. I don't know if that counts, but I wasn't sure when I prepared my budget. So I think maybe before I go through my numbers, I would ask. I did email with Brian, and I think he said we've used up our savings, but I didn't know if he meant the savings account or the real savings, right? With both that which I don't spend, others do.
No, our finances are good for 24. They're very bad for 25, 26, and probably 27.
Right, I see. So in the, right, so I guess said differently, the challenge you've laid to the department heads, looking back in time won't count for going forward. Does that make sense? Okay. So can I go off script then of what's in front of you? I thinking that based on what Brian had said previously, I was thinking that was going to be the answer. I was holding out hope. But I can make, I mean, my office's budget really is heavily salary. When you look at it, we only have about $80,000 in non-salary benefit expense. But I have some areas, and if I can resubmit it, or I can go through it now. But do you want me to go through it now?
Yeah, go through it.
I can cut drug enforcement. We've always had a line item. And I think sometimes there might have been a need where forfeiture monies wouldn't cover. But quite frankly, in the last 4 or 5 years, I haven't experienced that. So I would take that $1,000 out. I would reduce postage from 2,500 to 2,000. We seem to continually get more and more reliant on email, so that's not a bad thing. Printing, I would cut from 750 to 500. Witness fees, which is it's kind of a roll of the dice because we're a major case for blowing this out of the water anyways. But I would reduce that based on some of the historical stuff from 2,500 to 2,000. And similarly, kind of historically, I think we were safe with taking travel from 3,500 to 3,300. So all told, that results in, I think, $2,450, which is just over 3% of the contractual plus office. Any questions on that? Thank you.
I just have, this is probably a ridiculous question, but for logbooks, it says 17,000. Are you still required by law now to have logbooks in the office, or can you do it online?
That is our online cost. So really, the vast majority of that is our Westlaw account that the county attorney has negotiated and continues to with Westlaw, the best price that we can get. And then that's split amongst the public defender's office, our office, the county attorney's office, and assigned counsel.
So you're using it?
That's the vast majority. Then we have, but that is clunky for in court or traveling. So we do get what we call the gray book, which will have the significant laws that affect us. And then and that's not tremendously expensive. And then there's is it McGill's, Dan, do you remember? Something called McGill's, I think, that has vehicle traffic and penal law that are suitable for use in local court. But I would think we're probably, the vast majority of our expense on that line is the Westlaw.
Sam?
Yeah, so my question would be, Tony, without me going back and looking at those other 2 departments you mentioned, does this 17,000 include their departments, or do they have a budget line also?
They have a budget line also.
Gotcha, okay.
This is just our share. Yeah, but every month, the county attorney's office staff divvies up what the monthly bill is, sends an invoice to us, which we then process.
Gotcha. So that actually goes through Dan's office and
yes.
the billing. Okay, gotcha.
Any
This
other
would actually
questions?
be cheaper than buying physical book.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
And that was just a promise.
and they would be almost impossible to use today at the speed.
Yeah, it's not done. Look, anybody.
So on salaries and benefits, in the last few years, so we have a discovery grant from the state. If you look at, oh, sugar, I think it's 3389, 0.11 under the revenue piece. I think our discovery grant this year is $191,171. In years past, we've had equipment needs, the sheriff's department's had equipment needs, and Alternatives to Incarceration has had some needs that we've used, and appropriately so, but we've used that money to fund those. My proposal is this year, is to, quite frankly, is to allocate all of that money, which is also appropriate and authorized under the grant type restrictions, and use that to defray salaries, which are all driven really by all of our increase in staff have been due to discovery compliance. But that would be my request to do that. And that comes up just shy of 3% of our salaries and benefits, but only by a couple $100. But I think with those things, barring, and the challenge we have is extraditions, those are uncertain, but expert witnesses, which, you know, can never predict, but that would be how we would get to our 3%. So would it be best if I submitted a revised, so I can see what that looked like?
Brian, make you just.
Yeah, I wrote it down. So you got it,
Yeah.
okay.
But I give you credit for that was a nice try.
Well,
I
because
you
it's
left me
actually,
that message and I'm like, oh, where?
it's actually 7.5%.
Sorry, Dan, I didn't mean to include you that.
Well, did
That's how
the
come most of my
treasurer,
budget was
did we
when
get
the state
approval
got scrapped.
to pilfer that money from my accounts?
Yeah.
But no, but I,
We don't use the P word.
after, no, but after the, I mean, I kind of thought that, but I wanted to make sure, and then I thank you for responding and you reaching out, but I kind of figured that was the direction, so rather than you guess what, that was my best approach.
Yeah, we're in a situation where we're all looking at, we can get through 1 year, right? But we have no idea what next year is gonna, we don't know what the state's gonna do to us. We don't know where sales tax is going after Great Meadow goes away. There's too many unknowns to even try to calculate a number for any of those.
But I will say, unrelated to all of this, I do appreciate the support. I'm still really active statewide, and I do know for a fact, we don't always agree, and I don't get what I want, but you guys are always very supportive of our department. I think you've always shown support for the sheriff and really the county, I mean, picking up the slack where others can't, so that is not lost on the folks in my office.
Chairman?
There are a couple of things. You talked about the felony misdemeanor being more complex cases are up 11%. The more complex thing to it gives me kind of heartburn going over your budget is the unknowns. The more complex cases are going to involve more outside services, or, you know, extra witnesses, this sort of thing. And those lines always seem pretty small. It seems like one case could gobble them up without much problem. If you had a, you know, a significant homicide or, you know, multi-perpetrator homicide, or, you know, you could gobble witness fees really fast, I would think.
Where we're fortunate is both Dr. Sikorica as our medical examiner is, given his expertise and experience, is not, doesn't cost the county what his expertise and experience could. And then the other thing is with the state police lab, that's who we use for the vast majority of all of our evidence, whether it's, I mean, in the Monahan trial, the state police lab they were our witnesses for testifying for DNA, for the vehicular analysis, for the crash reconstruction, it was all state police, so they don't back bill us for those services. And the same for a lot of our IT investigations. That's one of the advantages we have by having a very robust state police lab.
I hope they're not watching, they might be next year.
Okay, so you're comfortable with those numbers?
Today.
Well, and
Well,
some of these things,
because I'm not.
well, some of them take 6 months or a year, you'll know in advance even.
But I think historically, we've been
You
able
got
to,
outside services, you got $9,500. Hell, back in 1980, I spent $10,000 on outside witnesses for a stupid moose case in Whitehall.
That was Sasquatch's pet.
Yeah, it was like Sasquatch's dog. You
I
They
know.
work together,
So, okay, if you're comfortable, I guess I gotta be comfortable with.
because
You didn't
otherwise,
get the right witnesses, I'll tell you that.
I drug some of them right out of the alley.
Chairman, I think if I were to think about what case might trigger it and what costs might go with it, the same question would be posed. Well, you've never used that much. Why are we
Right.
budgeting that? And I don't know the right answer.
Yeah, okay.
Other than I do know that if we need it, it'll be supported.
Well, we'll have to sort of, that's not a question.
And that's the approach I like,
Yeah,
knowing that the board will support you if you come back.
when I think New York State doesn't want to even admit that crime has even escalated. So they would probably rather have the state police do all that work so that we don't see it dollar wise.
And I can tell you the amount of forfeiture money we got this year definitely supports Tony's narrative. And I give Tony and the sheriff both credit because you'd be very surprised how much they can actually get done with that money and keep that off the taxpayers' dime. So I commend both of them to making that program actually worth something, whether you believe in it or not.
We only had one guy from Hartford, so.
Protege left the country for budget.
Very good. Thank you.
That looks great.
Yeah, no.
Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Hey, Sheriff, they're all in a good mood before you get here.
He's gonna change that.
That changes fast.
Go back.
If the moose was stupid, how was it so hard to catch?
Well, it was all eaten by the time you went in to get the guys that ate it.
Interstate, we had the country, killed it out of the country, got it mounted in the middle. Tasted it in the airplane.
Oh,
Then I went in across the bar and drug him off behind the bar.
Every time I got a moose. That's a moose. I mean, for me.
I think it was kind of.
I think it's all.
Don't think I could look at it.
I don't care what it costs, I'm gonna get you.
Okay, where do you want to start,
We'll
Sheriff?
start with revenue, page 7.
Parks and Department.
If you want, yeah. Good stuff, name, and then the one.
All right. Okay, it's down like 3/4 of the way down the page. The sheriff line starts underneath the public health. So, revenue wise, there's one correction we have to make.
Okay.
The third line down, other public safety income, disciplinary charges. That's the fair revenue. We charge the fair for security. And there was a miscommunication where that was supposed to go. So we're not taking it out of the budget. We're just moving it to a different line, just so.
The first line, right?
Yep. Yeah, 15.
Darn treasurer.
So that'll be 188, 788.
151001 is the line that's going. Other than that. You see everything else on that one, it's pretty sure. The big number there, the 280101 interdepartmental revenues, other that is our agreement with ESS. It's state funded. And that number has been pretty much the same. SDOs, about halfway down the page there, 1510. That obviously is the contracts from all the schools, that's the revenue. We added one this year in Granville. Just have 9 SPOs now.
What do you call the other 4 that we looking to hire? They're not SPOs?
No,
Oh, no.
the 9 are in the schools.
Right, I know that, but then you got 4 other ones that.
Actually, they'll actually be deputy.
Yeah, deputy sheriffs. And if you want, after, supervisor, after go through the budget, Whitehall contract.
Tell us where the, what line you're gonna have the Whitehall contract, be the same as we're.
I would refer to the treasurer, but I think, general contracted services.
So we
20,
can put-
keep them separate.
We can put them both in the same line, or we can give you line specific, so you can track each contract. The dealer's choice.
So it'd be like 0.14.
Yeah, we can just make another,
But the general contracted services.
it'll be
basically
the
where it is.
general base account again.
Yeah, that's page 9 at the top. That's Fort Edward PD, basically the line.
So if we're gonna do that, we'd wanna do that before I put out the budget.
Basically.
Okay. And that was
If you want to split.
409.
Remember the contract? line?
Yeah.
$418.
Yeah. There's a name and 9 in there.
Usually have more of an increase than I do.
You have a question?
Oh, no, that listed thing, I wonder if we want to split that and have them debating contracts.
Oh, keep them intermingled so they couldn't debate. That's a good point.
You're negotiating different with different towns, different regions.
Right.
You want to.
If there's anything, you can just add it.
And you can still have it no level with yours, so you can tell. Right?
Isn't the contracts for the schools though, and for villages, are we talking SPOs?
No, it's not about the,
The Whitehall,
right, whatever, but
not all, that's good.
I don't want fighting duels on the floor. Should be pretty volatile.
Going down through the others is not really, anything else that is increased. Okay. At least we're, I believe we're on track for what we, thought we were. Page 10, same thing there. And top.
Wait, what contract? You gotta get the split from them for the expense side, so they match.
Yes.
Okay.
When we get to the expenses,
Just
charge up that hill.
finish watching, I might be gone when.
Okay.
Do you have anything else on the revenue? If anyone has any questions?
Okay. Move right on to the.
Okay, page 50 is traffic safety. Road. It's halfway down the page, 3010 traffic safety.
Yep.
That contract or that amount, the budget amount is ever. And obviously, the next one down is administration. Those are salaries for the administration staff. And then on page 51, we get into the equipment. And I try to look at every line like I do every year when we do the budget. You mean Julie? You go back and do a 5-year history and we look at what we can cut. The one increase there you see on that first block, equipment, I put a little memo in there. This is, every 5 years we get new vests. We have to get them because they're only for 5 years. It's at least a 50% match. I believe it might be more this year, next year, I mean. So it's at least 50%, but I think probably gonna be 100. What we're, yeah, what we're told.
So that $50,000 line under equipment, maybe reimbursed, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, at least 25,000, and I think it's probably gonna be the whole thing.
They would have the probation, but they saw.
They're eligible for the same. The other ones on the bottom of the page didn't increase any. And it looks like there's one off supplies, other, that's a lease that's gonna expire next year for a copier, so that's gonna go away, but I didn't realize that until after. I'm not sure when that lease is up. But there is no other, as you can see there. Any different than what I tried to keep them as close to what they've been in the past as possible. I know someone had a question about on page 52, and most brought to my attention, there might be a question about vehicles. One of the reasons that we needed to get cars this year, additional cars this year or next year, is the person that won the bid for 2 years ago had the cars on their lot for over a year and a half. They had them in, they ordered them, got them in, then they had to be upfit, meaning they had to have all the sirens and all that. I got a hold of Dan, we tried everything we could to get the cars. We were at the point where we were just gonna go out and get them. But we just got 2 of them and they're in service, and then 2 more that are still have to be finished, the striping and all that stuff. But what that did was we put way more miles on cars that normally we would turn in. So, you know, we were kind of stuck. We would have been able to turn those cars in. But we actually got the cars that we ordered this year in before we got those cars that we ordered 2 years ago. So, but that, it didn't have anything to do with Whitehall. I know that was one of the questions, but it had more to do with the fact that we went a year and a half without those 4 cars that were sitting on the lot.
Well, your cars are out of carpool, right?
Yes.
Now, this carpool, what does this have to do with DPW?
That's the mileage that we were, it just
Carpool's
reminded
run
me
by-
that. I wanted to bring it up.
Right, I understand.
DPW is in charge of carpool, so the sheriff's cars are bought through carpool.
Right, and he pays or
He has to pay mileage and all that. Yes.
to
To
DPW.
DPW.
Okay.
It's a little higher because a couple extra cars in next year, but hopefully we'll get.
Well, you got 8 or 9 in there, so I don't know how many you really want.
Well, like I said, we ended up putting a lot of miles on a lot of cars that we didn't expect we were gonna have to. Because they're used by, obviously, 24 hours a day.
Yep. So on control is where, on 3112, where you on 3110 or 11?
52, I'm still on page 52, 3110.
Okay.
There's nothing else. Dan, I didn't know you could negotiate with Westlaw. You said this, so I might call on for that, but law books.
Holy cow. You must shoot a lot of criminals for $15,000 in ammunition.
Training, unfortunately.
Well, I wanted
Practice?
I wanted to address ammunition. Having just bought some, it's pretty incredible. But there was a move in DCGS to increase the number of times you had to qualify.
Yeah.
Has that gone through? I mean, it was going to twice a year and.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't.
Is that gonna double that number or?
It most likely will, and they also, they have a course of fire that you have to do. That's their course of fire that nobody's happy with. But,
It's still good, still 50 rounds.
I'm not sure on the amount of rounds it is.
Especially in that one, 60, but it's screw up half a box.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's gonna change. But that also is, that's pistol and rifle ammunition. And ammunition is expensive now.
I think that might be a little low.
Yeah, well,
If they go twice a year, it's.
unfortunately, I can tell you that we have stockpiled from previous years, so, there was a time when we couldn't get it at all. And it was a couple of years, so then a few years ago, we bought extra. Otherwise, that number would be higher because we're using ammo that we bought in past years to qualify.
Be cheaper to buy a reloader and pay somebody to reload.
Yeah, until one of them did go out.
I mean, for practice.
It'd be very long.
But so,
Sheriff, on the ammunition act, at one point, there was a time when you were concerned about storage facilities and locations for the forfeiture plus the.
all the airplanes.
Remember the copy of?
Was that about the ammunition or about the weapons they took?
Yeah, yeah, weapons we took.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, actually, we were able to find room within the office, basically moved a bunch of records out of a large room. And it was full. They've slowed down a little bit, but we still get 2 or 3 a week probably.
So you've gotten 4 in the last 48 hours.
Yeah, oh, that's what I said, a little bit. But, it was every day for a while there, but, and then we had people that had over 100 rifles that we had to take in.
Do we have a Civil War one still?
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, second.
Yeah.
Take them for ammunition.
Yep.
The grants project Lifesaver, which is such a wonderful program. I didn't see any grants in the revenue. I see zeros here. And I know that you've done such a good job with that.
Yeah.
Do we still have a lot of supplies left? or
Yeah,
Is it?
I don't need anything.
You're good.
I'm good. And if you spend any extra money this year, and I can only apply for that grant so often.
Thank you.
So the next year, I'll apply again.
I just didn't want it to fade away.
No,
It's
it's
such a
not.
good program.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and usually when it's a grant like that, I'm putting in the budget until we receive it, and then I go to committee and recommend.
Thank you.
Got them trained well, Al. Are you on 3112 now?
3112, yep.
That's where we get in the earnings for the.
Yes, yes, yep, those are.
So what's that number there?
Well, it's the one I gave you.
It's just, they just equal.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And that would be regular earnings. It'd be another line. That for
I believe
418.
Right.
Yeah, there's nothing else really jumps out at me there. I think the overtime, I think we're on track to be very close to the budget number. Even though we've had numerous cases that the DA spoke about earlier, where we've had, for instance, all of our investigators on scene for 3 days, you know, overtime on very serious cases. And those, you can't predict those, but we're still on track. I think we're right at that number.
When the overtime, with a full slate of officers, would the overtime still be that much?
No, it's been helpful, actually. Yeah, we're fully staffed and that's a big plus for us.
You have one more question,
Yep.
and then I'm trying to find in the budget, but I don't know
Sure.
exactly. Years ago, we talked about where juveniles would go when they sat in the jail facilities, and that they can't go into this jail. And so then we teasingly talked about putting him to the chair of the county attorney's desk. I know we've had some.
I didn't find that funny. Especially since I'm just finding out about it now.
Like, it's full of surprises, yeah.
Yeah. And,
As an attorney, I don't like surprises.
Have another job.
Maybe my lunch, I gotta go to court 45 minutes.
the conversation kind of happened, but it kind of got dropped. And I think that, we've been in a place where we might have younger people who need to go, and no place for them to go. So.
Well, that'll be on the jail portion of it.
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
Right, so DSS actually.
Oh, it could be.
It's a bit of both, but unfortunately, we tried to find a solution to the problem. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, corrections and OCFS politely told us no.
So there is no solution. Yeah.
No, and
No.
in fact, I just got the notice for Cassie about what to discuss, and I brought that up, and with the exception of NASA, everybody else in the county said we're having the same problem.
Right. But it is a continual problem.
Yeah,
And
it is a statewide issue.
It's a statewide issue.
Yeah. I think the last time we were fortunate to find somewhere closer than Rockland County, but Rockland County was our only option for a while.
So I wasn't sure if there was any appetite to come up with a solution, or the solution would be.
You could build a facility and charge people. Yeah, I think a lot about it.
I don't want to put into that one, but I want to take a step back. Several years ago, we got really clanked for a couple of years in a row with unexpected expenses under 207. Thought we were all done, and now I see this year you have 500 and some bucks in there. Is that the beginning of another long term?
Or a payout.
Or it was the end of the last one?
That's what I'm wondering.
Where's that?
207C, it was.
Page 52. When you scroll and yeah.
And that was an actual, so it might have been just the ending of it.
I got five, well, I thought we were done 2 years ago. And they got 568 bucks in there.
What is that?
We had 1,000,
207C.
we had 1,052 last year.
That's where somebody's injured and you have to keep on paying their medical expenses and keep them alive.
It was 72, so.
We had some on for a dozen years. Since
I think it's animal stuff. There's none budgeted, so hopefully there's none ongoing.
Well, but there's obviously something ongoing if there's money in there.
There is on the actual line.
Yeah.
But the year before there was $1,000, so there was something ongoing there too. So I don't know if it's
The year
little,
before, I would have considered probably the ending up of that big one we were on.
I don't know.
I just don't want this to be.
We don't have anybody currently on
We could have just been out for
Yeah,
a day or
but-
two,
it.
or.
Right, it could have been, just been,
All right.
I don't remember exactly what
As
that.
long as it's not gonna be huge surprises.
Not like the last one.
That one, like several others that we have that are, like the psychiatric things, it can be nothing you plan for, and all of a sudden plan on. I just want to make sure that
Yeah,
you didn't know about a plan on.
no. And with the, the number of people that we have in the nature of the job, wrestling with people all the time, it's like, we're fortunate to have it be that low. Page 53. No real. Increased either. I did decrease the part-time request by 10,000. Part-time deputies are mostly used in the civil office, but we have more of them now, but we don't use them as much. Then the bottom on 53, so civilian, that's the civil office and girls up front. Then on page 54. In the middle, that's the regular earnings, that's the whatever PD contract. I didn't see anything in the. I didn't see anything in the actual, so I didn't put anything in the request. Because I wasn't sure how that was working, but I know that they've been paying us for the last year and this year.
Well, this is the expense side, so I assume that's.
Or we've been paying it, right?
Right, I assume
Yeah.
that's in your.
Oh, it
point
is, it
one.
is, it is,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yeah, thank you, yeah. I just talked about that.
So we're under the jail, is that right?
Nope. Yeah, page 56 starts with directions. Bottom, regular earnings. That is. In the middle of the page, starts with equipment. And again, there's no real, except I reduced that top line equipment by $14,000. Again, we looked at what we spent in the past.
Well, you haven't got to fix any cameras.
No, exactly. That's a good point. And then the other ones, there's no real changes, except we did find that some of the stuff that was coming out of supplies other 428001 really should be coming out of the food line, because they're items like paper plates and napkins, stuff that they use for the Meals on Wheels and whatnot. So that looks like it's a lot more than what was requested, but it's actually less above there. So just kind of moves things around. But it did reduce quite a few lines. You can see the next one, repairs, it's 10,000 under. Contracted services, 14,000 less. Then, oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. The medical supplies line is the one I reduced 30,000. And that had, again, other things that were coming out of there that weren't supposed to, so. That was the one that made up the difference in that other line.
Okay.
Page 58. Those things don't change much. I reduced them as much as I thought I could. And we get into the part-time earnings. Kept that one the same. That in the jail, we use part-time more than they do the road. And civilian is the nurses. Cooks are supposed to. Yeah, those are the nurses, and then 3155 on page 59 are the cooks.
Anybody got any questions as we go along here?
And page 60, the central arraignment stuff, that's stayed the same. Saki rebuy, that budget is always the same numbers. Never know when the trainings are. Usually if it's out of town training, we pay for that with forfeiture money, so. If it includes a hotel, that's not. For that.
Anybody have any questions?
Good job, Sheriff.
Anything else for public safety?
The only thing that when, we had the public defender in here, he had $1,500 in the COVID line and that's over with, so I know it's coming out. I don't know if he needs it or not, but he can't be on the COVID line, they don't pay anymore. So, I forgot to ask him when he was here, but we went through it.
Thank you.
With that,
Thank you.
public defender, he had $1,500 in money for, on the personnel.
2025.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna have to.
Go ahead, Dina, you can do that.
Adjourn. Good job.